Hey guys, tonight we're going to step into a world built not with blueprints or dreams, but with fire muscle and a whole lot of sweat. Picture this. You're standing barefoot on packed earth soot, dancing in the air like black snowflakes, and a forge snarling in the corner, glowing like a small angry sun. The heat clings to your skin like a second shirt. Your ears ring with the clang of metal on metal, and your father's rough voice calls out your name not gently, not sweetly, but like a command barked from behind an anvil. You're not noble. You're not rich. You weren't chosen by prophecy or fate. You were born into a long line of blacksmiths, a legacy of burns, bruises, and bellows. There's no inheritance except for calloused hands and a pile of debts that nobody remembers accruing. You're not here because you wanted to be. You're here because someone had to be, and that someone apparently is you. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your first memory isn't a toy or a lullaby. It's the smell of iron and a voice telling you not to touch that right before you do and blister your palm. Welcome to the family business. Childhood passes quickly when the forge becomes your playground. Other children learn letters. You learn that the hammer has a rhythm and the anvil has a temper. You're still small, but already you're carrying buckets that slosh and smoke. The weight is too much for your arms, but there's no option to say no. That's not how the forge works. It doesn't wait for you to grow into the job. It grows into you. By the age of 8, your hands are stained, your lungs already flirting with permanent damage, and your knuckles know the difference between hot iron and iron that's about to be hot, because one leaves a scar and the other just stings. The house is next to the forge. You hear it breathing at night like an animal that never fully sleeps. It groans when the wind shifts. It wheezes when damp creeps in. It coughs embers in your dreams. Your parents don't read bedtime stories. They mutter about orders broken, hinges, and tools misplaced. Your first lesson isn't about shaping metal. It's about shaping yourself. You learn how to stay awake when exhausted, how to lift something that's too heavy without making a sound, and how to eat meals with one hand because the other one is always burned. There's one particular day that stays with you the first time your father lets you strike the iron. He lines it up on the anvil, holds the tongs with a seasoned grip, and tells you to swing. You hesitate. He doesn't. The hammer is heavier than you expected. You hit the wrong spot. He doesn't yell, but the look is worse. Disappointment cuts deeper than any burn. Later that day, he hands you a curved piece of metal and tells you to fix it. It's bent beyond repair. That's the point. It's a test. You fail. He shrugs and tells you to try again tomorrow. This is how learning works here. Trial, error, injury, repetition. And you keep trying. Because slowly something starts to change. Not in the work. It's still exhausting, but in you. Your skin thickens. Your arms start to carry the weight without shaking. You stop crying when you get burned. You still hurt, but now the pain feels normal. One morning, you realize you haven't thought about running away in weeks. That scares you more than the fire. It means the forge has won. You're not a visitor anymore. You're becoming a part of it. There's an old superstition passed down through blacksmiths. If the forge spits fire at your feet, it means it likes you. If it scorches your face, it's just teasing. But if it goes silent when you enter the room, if the embers dim and the air grows still, it means it's waiting, watching, testing you. You never knew if that was true until the day it happened. You stepped into the forge after sunrise. The coals were glowing, but no smoke rose, no crackle, no heat wave, just stillness. For a moment, you wondered if it had gone out. You approached and whoosh, the fire flared to life like it had been holding its breath. The flames reached up and curled around your arm. Not enough to burn, just enough to remind you this place is alive, and it's chosen you. Historians still argue whether medieval blacksmithing was truly a respected trade or simply tolerated. You weren't a priest, you weren't a warrior, but you weren't a peasant either. You lived in the strange in-between, needed but never praised. And even now as a child you feel it. You're essential but invisible. You go to sleep each night not in silence, but to the memory of hammer strikes and furnace roar. You dream of nails and tongs. Your lullaby is the hiss of iron plunged into water. And tomorrow, you do it again. You wake before the sun, because your day doesn't begin with light, it begins with fire. You don't have an alarm clock, just instinct and the habit of rising when your bones ache the least. The embers are already waiting like loyal dogs curled up in the forge's belly, still warm from yesterday's labors. You don't speak as you move. Words aren't needed. Your feet know the way. You step into the smithy and breathe in that familiar blend, charcoal sweat iron, and something faintly sweet from the old wood beams that still cling to their forest scent under all the soot. The air scratches your throat, but you barely cough anymore. The fire must be coaxed, not lit, not sparked, but fed like a sullen animal. You add fresh fuel, work the bellows, and wait. And then there the blaze unfurls. You feel it kiss your face with that dry, almost intimate heat. Today is an apprenticeship day, which means you'll spend half your time being corrected and the other half being blamed. Your master is your father or your uncle or maybe even your mother, depending on how your village handles inheritance. But titles don't matter here. Authority is determined by scars and the quiet way someone moves around the forge without flinching. This morning's task, nails. Hundreds of them, every size. Horseshoe nails, timber nails, armor rivets. It sounds simple until your arms go numb. The tedium is part of the education. You're not learning to make nails, you're learning to endure. Your fingertips, already blistered, start peeling again. But you don't stop. You just rotate to your less damaged fingers and keep going. The smell of cooked skin mixes with the metallic tang of iron, and somewhere between the 6th and 7th dozen, you stop noticing. There's an old joke among blacksmiths. What's the easiest part of the job? Answer the moment you die. Midway through the morning, a villager arrives clutching a mangled hinge like it's a wounded bird. He says it came off the barn door. You know the barn, you know the door. You know it broke because someone leaned against it during a drunken argument last night. But he says it's urgent, and you nod. Because in this job, everyone else's emergency becomes your responsibility. You file down the jagged edge, flatten the twist heat, the metal reshape it, and cool it, all while your stomach growls and the back of your neck starts to blister under the forge's radiating heat. There's something poetic about how much you give to objects no one will thank you for. But poetry doesn't pay. Bread does. Lunch comes late. Bread hard as a roofing shingle. A bit of cheese that may have been cheese last week, and water warm, metallic, always slightly smoky, no matter how clean the cup. You eat standing up because sitting makes it harder to get moving again. Your legs lock if you rest too long. One of your older cousins joins you at the bench, chewing slowly and watching the coals like they might do something unexpected. You joke about how they never do. He grunts a laugh. You both know that's not true. Just last winter, the forge blew. A poorly sealed tuyere cracked under pressure. The fire whooshed out like a dragon exhaling sideways. No one died, but your cousin lost part of an eyebrow, and you gained a new respect for how fast everything can go from controlled to hospital visit. Not that there's a hospital, just a local woman with herbs honey and zero patience for whining. Afternoon means more hammering. Your shoulder has started making a soft clicking sound each time you lift. You wonder how many clicks are too many. Then you remind yourself, it doesn't matter. You have work. A group of children passes outside laughing. One has a wooden sword. You smile faintly and wonder if you made it. Probably. Your mark is on the hilt, a tiny scratch shaped like a bird hidden where only you'd look. You do that sometimes, not for pride, just so you know something of you went out into the world. Historians still argue whether medieval apprenticeships offered any real mobility. Most claim the system was rigid. Others say skilled workers like blacksmiths were exceptions, able to travel, set up shops, even gain status. But in your world, travel means abandoning the forge your family has held for generations. And status, that's something the church or the crown cares about. You care about nails. There's a brief lull before dusk. You take a moment to oil the tools, sort the tongs by shape, and wear and wipe the anvil with an old rag more whole than cloth. The forge quiets, but doesn't sleep. It's like a tired elder resting, but always listening. Your father or whoever guides your training hands you a worn leather-bound notebook. Inside are sketches, diagrams, notes written in barely legible ink. It's the family's smithing book, passed down stained with sweat and maybe blood. Some of the drawings don't make sense yet. Others do. You trace one sketch with a fingertip, an iron gate hinge elegantly curved with a note beneath it. Make beauty, even in what no one sees. You don't know when it was written, but you know who wrote it, someone like you. You close the book as the last glow of daylight fades outside, and then quietly you begin laying out the molds for tomorrow. because tomorrow comes early, and you'll rise again before the sun, stepping into the fire, not because you want to, but because you must. You don't dream much anymore, or if you do, you never remember. It's hard to hold on to fantasy when your days are filled with the clang of iron and the sizzle of water swallowing heat. When your body collapses into sleep, it's not gentle. It's more like shutting down. The morning begins again before your eyes even open. The ash still clings to your arms from yesterday. You barely bother to wash it off. What's the point? You'll be covered again in an hour. Your shirt smells like old smoke and yesterday's sweat, but it's still the cleanest one. You tug it on and re-enter the heat. Today, the forge hums louder than usual. There's a different energy in the air. Your mentor, father, uncle, whatever title he goes by today, tells you it's time to practice your first horseshoe. Your first real horseshoe. Not the twisted iron practice pieces you've been hammering into spaghetti shapes for months. This time, it's for an actual horse. For the miller's new gelding, no less. The one with hooves the size of soup bowls. You swallow the nervous lump in your throat and nod, and you begin. The forge's fire is like a stage light now spotlighting your every move. You draw the iron bar from the coals red hot and hissing. You place it on the anvil, grip the hammer, and strike. It rings out clear, bright, almost too sharp in the morning air. Sparks spit upward like angry fireflies. You miss your mark. The curve warps too early. You groan quietly. Your mentor says nothing. He watches. That's worse than shouting. You try again and again. The bar shortens with every mistake until finally, on your fifth attempt, you get a shape that looks like a horseshoe. Not perfect, but honest. As it cools in the barrel of water steam, rising in a thick, ghostly swirl, your mentor finally nods. Decent. That's all he says. But that's everything. You hold up the shoe, and for a fleeting second, you see more than just curved metal. You see the road that horse might run on the cart, it might pull the family, it might carry to the market. You made something that will matter even if no one knows it. Then you drop it in the storage box and get back to work. Blacksmithing isn't about inspiration. It's about repetition. You do the same thing 1,000 times until your hands know it better than your mind. By now, you can tell the temperature of a piece of iron by the shade of orange it glows. Pale yellow, too hot. Deep red, too cold. Dull cherry with flickering sparks, just right. The forge is its own language. You're still learning to speak it. Later, a traveling merchant stops by with a broken wheel rim. He's impatient, loud, and smells like onions that gave up on life. He says he needs it by evening. You say nothing. You take the rim, examine the splinters, and silently begin your work. The rim needs reshaping, reinforcing, and at least 2 rivets replaced. Your tools are ready. Your sleeves are rolled. Your back already aches, but this is the job. As you file the new rivets, a sliver of iron stabs your thumb. Blood beads up, but you keep working. You suck it clean and keep filing. You've long since stopped flinching. Pain has become background noise. And that's the funny part. Historians still argue whether the physical toll of blacksmithing led to shorter lifespans. Some claim smiths were unusually hardy, built by fire and iron. Others suggest they died young lungs, blackened backs, broken hearts cooked from the inside out by years of labor. You think maybe both are true because your body is already changing. You're barely in your teens, but your shoulders are rounded forward. Your knuckles pop when you flex. Your forearms are roped with muscle, and your palms, well, let's talk about those. You used to have fingers. Now you have weapons. Thick, rough, permanently stained. Your nails are gone more often than they're present. Some peeled off from burns. Others were crushed under falling tools or clumsy strikes. Your fingertips have no feeling left in them. You once grabbed a hot bar by mistake and didn't realize until you smelled the skin. Your mentor tells you that's a good thing. Means you're finally becoming useful. Charming. But it's true. There's a weird pride in the damage. You compare blisters with the other apprentices like battle scars. Oh, that one tongue slipped. Had to dunk my whole hand. Didn't even scream. The truth is, you did, but quietly, into your sleeve. Around midday, a small procession clatters past the forge nobles on horseback, heading to the manor. Their horses are sleek. Their cloaks shimmer with colors no peasant could afford. One of them glances in your direction, then away. They'll never know your name. But you've sharpened the sword at that noble's side. You've shoed the horse he rides. Maybe even repaired the gate to the manor he rides through. That's your place in the world. Unseen but indispensable. Your master once told you, the knight may win the war, but it's our steel that holds his sword together. He said it like a warning, but it always sounded like power. By sundown, the forge is tired. So are you. You hang your apron, leather black and stiff with old sweat and sparks. The workbench is littered with iron shavings and half-used nails. The coals dim, but you don't leave yet. You stare at the anvil a moment longer. Its face is chipped at one corner, a mark from years ago when your father struck too hard in a fit of rage. He never repaired it, said it gave the anvil personality. You think that's true of yourself, too. And as you finally step out into the twilight air ash, still clinging to your eyebrows, you think today you didn't just survive, you forged. Evening in the village smells different, cooler. The air carries a hint of wood smoke and distant cooking. Somewhere someone's roasting onions and your stomach grumbles in protest. You've had nothing but stale bread and a dried pear since sunrise. Still, you pause at the doorway of the forge, letting the night air touch your blistered skin. Your ears ring from a full day of hammering, and there's a twitch in your left eye that won't go away. You blink it off. You always do. Dinner is not a grand affair. It's not even dinner in the way nobles might describe it. It's more of a negotiation between food scraps and fatigue. You sit on a stool that wobbles like it's lost the will to stand and tear off a piece of bread that could double as roofing tile. You dunk it into a bowl of thin stew potato peels, turnip chunks, maybe a bit of old mutton if you're lucky. You eat with one hand. The other still tingles from gripping tools too long. A younger sibling runs past you, trailing smoke-dirt footprints across the floor. You don't yell. What's the point? They'll learn the same way you did through proximity, to flame and consequence. After you eat, you walk outside again. The forge glows faintly through the cracks in the shutters. It's never truly dark. It's like the fire doesn't want to sleep, not fully. And honestly, neither do you, because you've started noticing something strange. The more you work, the more you see iron everywhere, not just in the forge, but in your dreams and your thoughts. Nails in a door frame catch your eye. The curve of a gate latch makes your fingers twitch. You evaluate the rivets on a plow without meaning to. It's not just a job anymore. It's rewiring you. Your back hurts all the time now, not just from the hammering, but from the bending, the lifting, the standing, the endless repetition of movements that wear grooves into your spine. You've begun to hunch slightly, and when you catch your reflection in the well water, you don't look like a child anymore. You look forged. The forge has taken its toll. Your skin is no longer smooth, but marbled with burns, calluses, and the occasional soot tattoo that no soap can remove. And then there are the sounds. Oh, the sounds. The bellows make this wheezing sigh like an old man catching his breath. The hammer rings out in tones your body now responds to instinctively. You can tell who's striking just by the rhythm. Your father has a sharp, impatient cadence. Your cousin hits too hard on the upswing. You've started to find a groove of your own. Historians still argue whether blacksmithing was passed down by necessity or by pride. Some say it was simply survival. If your father hammered, so would you. Others believe there was real honor in the fire, that it wasn't just inheritance, it was identity. You think it's both. You didn't ask for this. But now that it's in your blood, you couldn't imagine anything else. Your hands no longer ache, they hum. You remember a strange moment from earlier? A customer had asked for a simple fireplace poker, nothing fancy. But as you bent the rod, you found yourself adding a twist to the shaft. Not functional, not requested, just elegant. When you handed it over, the man looked confused, then pleased. Said nothing paid the same. But you noticed how he turned it over in his hands. That twist, unnecessary, unnoticed by most, was yours. You stare at the stars above the village. Somewhere a lute plays off-key in the tavern. Laughter echoes. You don't go. You don't feel welcome there, because there's something about you now. You smell of smoke even when you scrub. Your hair is permanently singed on one side. Your boots are stiff from sweat and soot. The barkeep knows to seat you near the window if you come at all. Not out of kindness, but because the others will complain. You don't blame them. The forge brands you not with iron, but with aura. People sense it. They step aside when you enter a room. It's not fear, not exactly. It's something quieter. You're a reminder of work, of necessity, of heat and effort, and all the things they don't want to think about when they're sipping ale and pretending life is easy. So you sit outside. You drink water from the bucket. You let your skin cool under the stars. And in that silence, you begin to feel something else, a quiet pride. Because even if they don't see it, even if they forget your name or pretend your work is just background noise, you know the truth. That castle on the hill, its gates were bent in your forge. The plow carving the fields, Your rivets hold it together. The horses pulling carts through town, they don't limp because you gave them shoes. No crown, no glory, no songs. But without you, none of this runs. You reach into your apron and pull out a small bit of scrap iron. You've been saving it, not sure why. It's shaped vaguely like a crescent moon. You run your thumb along the edge, feeling the groove your own chisel left. You don't know what you'll make of it yet. Maybe nothing, but it's yours. The forge may own your body, but your hands, they still remember how to create something just because you want to. And maybe maybe that's enough. The next morning, you wake with a start, not to light, but to silence. And that's the problem. The forge isn't breathing, no smoke rising, no bellows wheezing, no embers pulsing in the dark. It's gone cold. This doesn't happen, not here. You pull on your boots, still crusted with ash, and stumble toward the forge. Your hands move before your brain catches up stacking wood, checking the flue, prepping the kindling. The match sparks, and you blow on the base until the tiny flame stirs like a cranky baby. Within minutes, the fire returns, hesitant at first, then roaring back like it never left. But the silence lingers in your head. You've grown used to the noise. It's a lullaby now. The quiet felt like death. By midday, the forge is fully awake again, and so are you. There's a sword to be reforged today. It belonged to one of the town's militia captains, snapped clean during a training accident when he tried to show off. You barely hide your smirk. The blade itself isn't anything grand, basic, iron-worn, grip decorative pommel that looks better than it handles. But it's symbolic. It tells a story, strength, readiness, defense. And it's your job to make it whole again. As you heat the broken edges and begin to weld them together, the sparks dance high, blazing like fireflies on parade. You feel the hammer connect just right, not too soft, not too sharp. The edge reforms bit by bit, and you're reminded of something your mentor once whispered while shaping a bent spearhead metals like people. If it's never been broken, it can't be strong. You didn't understand it then. You do now. Your own body agrees. Your joints crack like walking sticks. Your fingers twitch when still too long. And you're only just starting to grow a beard. What will you feel like at 40, if you make it that far? Historians still argue whether blacksmiths were considered craftsmen or laborers. Some records elevate them as essential artisans, creators of civilization's backbone. Others lump them in with coopers and thatchers, useful but replaceable. You laugh at the idea of being replaced. Who else wants to live like this? The reforged sword cools in the water barrel, steam curling in tendrils around your face. You check the temper. You test the balance. It's not perfect, but it's good. You scratch a tiny mark into the hilt your maker's sign, hidden in the inside curve. No one will see it, but you'll know. As you turn back to the bench, your hand knocks over a pile of files. One falls straight onto your foot. You wince, but you don't curse. That's new. Your foot's already a battlefield, layers of old burned split blisters, and the scar where you once stepped on a glowing horseshoe. That one hurt. You limped for days, but kept working. The apprentice motto, if you can stand, you can strike. You pause to examine your apron. It's meant to protect you, and to be fair, it does. Mostly, it has burned holes near the belly and a charred strap that barely holds. There's a spot where molten slag once splashed and welded itself into the leather. You tried picking it out, but eventually left it. It's part of the armor now. There's a sound at the door. A small voice. The village baker's son, maybe 6, holding a twisted metal object with both hands. It's broken, he mumbles. You squint. It's a toy sword bent at the hilt, the kind you might have made on a slow day and handed out to keep peace between siblings. You take it gently. Your hands, blackened and cracked, look terrifying next to his. But the boy doesn't flinch. He trusts you. You fix his toy with 2 quick strikes and hand it back. He beams. Thanks. And runs off. You stare after him longer than you mean to. That smile will echo in your chest for the rest of the day. Not all work is for coin. Some of it is for something else. You head back into the forge, now sticky with afternoon heat. There's a strange comfort in the sweat pooling at your collar, the dull ache settling in your spine. You are tired, yes, but alive in a way you can't explain. And then you notice it. On the wall behind the tool rack, a spiderweb perfectly symmetrical, catching the light from the forge just so. In the center, a single iron shaving is suspended like prey. You smile. Even spiders are smiths, you think. As evening approaches, another blacksmith from a neighboring village arrives. He's older, wider, with a beard like a burnt mop, and hands so thick they look like mittens. He nods in greeting. Heard you're shaping hinges for the new grain store. You nod. He asks to see one. You show him. He grunts. Not bad. Bit light on the bend. Your stomach twists. But you say nothing. He hands it back, expression unreadable. You'll get it. That's the closest thing to praise you'll get from someone like him. And it's enough. You close the day with a final task, cleaning the bellows. Dust and soot clog its throat, and you cough as you brush it out. You think not for the first time about how much of this work is maintenance, of tools, of fire, of yourself. And when it's done, when the fire dies down and the tools are hung and your arms hang heavier than iron, you step outside again. You lean against the doorframe and watch the stars return. And even though your clothes stink, your hands sting, and your knees throb, you feel solid, like something forged. Like maybe, just maybe, you're beginning to shape more than metal. The rain comes overnight, soft at first, then relentless. You hear it drumming on the forge roof like 1,000 tiny blacksmiths tapping their own anvils in rhythm. You wake before the rooster crows, not that you ever needed one, and step outside to find the world soggy gray and steaming. The forge, though, is still warm. That's the trick. Even after the fire dies, the stones hold heat. You run your fingers along the anvil. Damp, yes, but not cold. The place remembers. This morning's job, fixing the hinges on the town granary. The hinges you made last week, they've already rusted. You tell yourself it's the rain. Maybe a poor batch of iron. Maybe too much sulfur in the coal. Maybe just bad luck. You haul your gear to the granary tools, clanking in a sack that weighs more than a full-grown goat. As you crouch under the granary door, cold mud creeping up your sleeves, you think not for the first time that you could have been anything else. A baker, maybe. A thatcher. Even a shepherd. At least sheep don't judge. But then your fingers find the flaw in the hinge, a warp you missed during quenching. It would have snapped in a weak rain or not. You nod to yourself. You didn't fail because the iron failed. You failed because you rushed. That's fixable. You reheat the hinge on site, using a portable brazier you rigged from an old soup pot. And stubbornness. It spits and smokes, but it works. You hammer it flat, realign the pin, and drive it home with 3 short taps. It fits now. You wipe your hands and glance around. No applause, no one watching. Just wet sheep and the faint smell of cabbage from the house next door. But the hinge works, and it'll last, this time. Historians still argue whether medieval tradespeople understood metallurgy in a scientific sense. You certainly don't have a library or formulas. But you know which iron cracks too soon, which coal burns too dirty, which tongs slip, and which bellows have a leak that sings like a bird when the forge is hot enough. You may not be a scholar, but your fingers have read thousands of pages, none of them written. Back in the forge, you strip off your soaked tunic and hang it near the coals. Steam rises in ghostly trails. You turn your shirt halfway through drying because you've learned the hard way that uneven heat leads to crispy sleeves. A knock on the frame interrupts your moment of almost warmth. It's the miller. Again, this time with a barrel hoop that snapped clean through. His timing is terrible, but his wife always sends barley bread with him as payment, so you wave him in. As he watches you work, he leans in, trying to make conversation. He asks if you ever think about leaving. Going to the city. Bigger orders. Better pay. More excitement. You say nothing for a while, just focus on the hoop. You clamp it, heat it, bend it back into shape. Then finally you answer, and who would fix your broken hoops? He laughs, nervously, then leaves the bread and walks out. The truth is, you have thought about leaving. Everyone does. There's a story told among smiths about a journeyman who walked all the way to a far-off city where the king's horses were shod with gold and the gates sang when they opened. He stayed there 3 days, then turned around and came home. When asked why, he simply said they had no soot. You're starting to understand what he meant. The forge is more than your workplace. It's your world, the rhythm of the bellows, the hiss of steam, the scent of hot metal it's woven into your bones. You finish shaping the hoop and set it aside to cool. Then you grab a horseshoe from yesterday's batch. It's not quite right. A bit too thick on one side. You file it smooth, and as you do, you remember something odd. When you were 5, you used to imagine the forge was a dragon, the way it breathed smoke, how it growled when you fed it, how the fire curled like tongues. You were terrified of it, thought it might eat you. Now you feed it by hand. You stand in its mouth daily, and somehow it hasn't devoured you yet, but it has changed you. Your spine curves forward now. Your nails are black even when scrubbed. You smell permanently of smoke, and no flour or soap will stick. One time You tried perfume, the kind stolen from a passing merchant's cart and traded behind the tavern. You dabbed it behind your ears, thought maybe just once you'd blend in with the rest. It lasted 10 minutes. Then the forge swallowed it, and you went back to smelling like iron and fire. Your skin now holds the heat longer than you'd like. You're not sure if that's normal. Maybe you're becoming something else. Not quite human, not quite machine, just forged. And yet there are moments, small quiet ones, when you catch yourself humming. Not a song you know, just a rhythm syncing with your hammer strikes. 3 beats, a pause, then 2, like a secret code only your muscles understand. Historians still argue whether blacksmithing was art or labor. You think it's both. The repetition dulls your senses, yes, but every now and then something beautiful slips through. A curve in a blade, a twist in a handle, a hinge that fits with a click so perfect it sounds like music. You catch yourself smiling, just for a second. Then someone calls your name, another hinge to fix, another night ahead. And still you stand. You lift the hammer, you return to the fire, because this isn't just a forge. It's your inheritance, your burden, and your home. You don't keep a calendar. Time in your world is measured by burned scars, the growth of calluses, and the way your arms stop aching after the first few hundred swings. Seasons blur into each other. You know it's spring, not because of flowers, but because your blisters start forming faster in the heat. Today, your job is simple in theory. Repair a cracked plowshare before planting season fully takes hold. Simple until you lift the thing. It's the size of a small coffin and twice as stubborn. You brace your legs, tilt your hips, and manage to drag it onto the anvil with a grunt that sounds older than you are. The farmer who dropped it off said, "It cracked clean through a rock last week." You believe it. The split runs jagged like a bolt of lightning frozen in iron. It'll need welding, reshaping, tempering, the whole dance. As you fire up the forge, sweat starts pooling in places you didn't know could sweat. And this is just the setup. You've learned something over the years. Metal has moods. Some days it bends willingly, pliant and forgiving. Other days it fights brittle and temperamental. Today feels like one of those days. You coax the fire higher. The forge answers with a low, throaty roar that warms your face and dries your lips. The plowshare slides into the coals. Slowly, it begins to glow. You wait, not too long, just until the color shifts dull red to bright orange to that perfect yellow that signals readiness. You pull it out and lay it across the anvil. The hammer finds your hand like it's been waiting all morning. The first strike rings clear. So does the second. But by the 5th, you already feel the resistance. This is going to be a long repair. You think of all the things you could have been doing today. Sleeping, eating, literally anything else. But no, here you are forging a plowshare that doesn't even belong to you for a man who probably thinks your name is Boy. Still, you work because no one else will. Midway through a village, girl passes by the shop. She's carrying a basket of herbs, maybe on her way to the healer. She glances your way, pauses for a second, then keeps walking. She didn't smile, but she didn't flinch either. Progress? You return to the work. The metal has softened, become manageable. You hammer the seam, weld the crack, and start shaping the edges. Each strike sends vibrations through your arm and into your chest like a second heartbeat, and for a moment, just a moment, it feels good. Not just tolerable, good. Historians still argue whether medieval blacksmiths had any say in village affairs. Some documents list smiths as respected members of the community trusted with tools, weapons, even secrets. Others suggest they were merely tolerated, necessary, but not welcome. You lean toward the latter. You've heard the whispers, the jokes. Don't stand too close to the smith, or your hair'll catch fire. Careful, he stinks worse than the tanner. Bet he sleeps in the coals. You do not sleep in the coals, but some nights you fall asleep beside them, and that counts for something. As you finish the plowshare and plunge it into water, steam billows out like a curtain. It wraps around you momentarily, hiding everything. You close your eyes just for a breath. And in that swirl of heat and silence, you remember a story. There was a blacksmith long ago who forged a crown so beautiful that even the king wept upon seeing it. But the smith, he refused payment. Said the crown wasn't his to sell. He'd made it out of grief, not gold. His son had died the winter before. The crown was buried with the boy, and the forge fire never burned the same again. You wonder if that story's true, or if it's just something apprentices whisper when the nights grow too quiet. Either way, it lingers. You finish the job. The plowshare now whole gleams in places where you buffed it. It'll last another season, maybe two. Depends on the rocks, depends on the farmer, depends on everything, really. As you set it aside, your shoulder clicks loudly, a reminder. This work adds up, one strike at a time. Later, during cleanup, you find an old chisel with a split shaft. You meant to toss it weeks ago, but instead you hold it up to the light and study the crack. Something about it looks familiar. You set it on the workbench, not for repair, just to remember. And then you hear a small voice, the baker's son again. This time, no toy, just wide eyes and a question. Is it true you can turn swords into plows? You smile, sometimes, if you hit them the right way. He nods seriously and runs off. You shake your head, but the question sticks. You've turned many things into many other things. Horseshoes from bars, nails from rods, blades from broken tools. But you've never made a plow from a sword. Maybe one day. For now, you turn out the coals, wipe your hands, stretch your back, and step outside where the evening smells like wet earth and new beginnings. Tonight, the village is louder than usual, not in celebration, just life spilling out of doorways and echoing down muddy lanes. Someone's arguing about goats. Children are running too fast with sticks, pretending to be knights. A dog barks at nothing with great conviction. But inside the forge, silence save for the soft ticking of cooling metal. You sit on the floor for once, back against the wall, legs stretched out, palms open beside you. For a few precious minutes, you're not working. You're just still. You notice things in the quiet. A hairline crack on the handle of your favorite hammer, a spider web forming between two nail bins. Your boots, once leather and proud, now resemble something stitched from regret and soot. You let your head rest against the stone wall. The heat from the forge has already seeped into it, and now it seeps into you. You close your eyes, just for a breath. That's when you hear it. The anvil creaks, not loudly, not as if it's moving, just settling, groaning like an old man twisting his spine. You smile. It always does that after a long day. They say every forge has a soul. Not a real one, maybe, but a kind of memory, a presence. Some smiths give theirs names. Yours doesn't have one, not yet. But you talk to it sometimes, usually when the tools misbehave. Really, you mutter toward the anvil. You couldn't hold that rivet steady. It never answers, which is probably for the best. There's an old story half remembered from overheard tavern talk about a blacksmith who forged a bell so perfectly tuned that it sang when the wind passed through it. They said he never struck another piece of iron again, just sat beneath the bell listening until the day he died. You wonder if that's true? Probably not, but it's nice to think about. Your knees crack as you rise. There's no romantic retirement here, only more work. Tomorrow, a traveling merchant is bringing in 3 wagon wheels and a bent lantern frame. You already dread the lantern. Those curves are fiddly and annoying. You check the tool rack before bed. One of the files is missing. Not lost, just wedged between the bricks again. You retrieve it with a grunt and place it where it belongs. That's when your hand brushes something small, wedged in the corner, a thin strip of hammered bronze, curved like a crescent. You didn't put it there. Maybe your father did, or your father's father. You hold it up to the forge light. It's etched, just barely. A symbol, a spiral, could be decorative, could be religious, could be nothing, but it makes you pause. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths were seen as sacred figures or just servants. Some cultures placed them above even warriors, keepers of fire shapers of destiny. Others saw them as necessary evils. Too close to the flame, too dangerous to trust. You don't know what your village believes. No one ever says. But people leave you alone. That says enough. You set the bronze piece on your bench. Maybe you'll polish it. Maybe you won't. But you won't throw it away. Outside, the sky has turned the color of cold steel. A pale crescent moon hangs above the roofs like the very piece you just found. You smile at the coincidence. Or maybe it's not one. You walk past your father's anvil on the way out. You run your fingers along the top, smoothed by decades of strikes. It's not flat anymore. It curves slightly inward like a shallow dish. You like that. It means it's been used. You remember watching him as a child, arms like tree trunks hammering with a rhythm so sure it could have been music. Now you strike the same beat. Sometimes you catch yourself moving like he did. Elbow tight, shoulder down, strike on the exhale. You never asked to inherit this life. But now that it's yours, it fits like a well-forged grip. The village has quieted. Most lights are out. A few windows flicker with candle glow. You pass the inn on your way home. They know better than to offer you ale. You'd only drink it with your hand still blackened, and that tends to unsettle the other patrons. Instead, you stop by the well and wash your face. Cold water. Brutal, but clean. At least until you dry off and realize you've smeared more soot from your shirt back onto your cheek. You laugh. A dry, raspy chuckle. You sound like a broken hinge. As you near your home, you glance back at the forge. The coals are faint now, just the gentlest glow, like eyes half closed, still watching, still warm. You wonder if the forge dreams when you do. And if it does, what kind of dreams would it have? Probably not of crowns or bells or gold. Probably just iron. Heavy, cracked, and always waiting to be made whole again. You dream that night, though you don't remember the details. Only a sense of weight and warmth, like you were cradled inside something ancient and vast. Maybe the forge, maybe yourself. When you wake, it's still dark. You listen, not for voices or animals or even the wind. You listen for the fire, and sure enough, the forge hums softly. Even in rest it breathes. Your joints creak as you stretch. The floor is cold. So are your feet. You slip on your boots, stiff with yesterday's sweat and soot, and step outside. The morning dew clings to the grass, and the sky is barely beginning to blush with dawn. You take a moment to breathe in the air before it's ruined by charcoal smoke and iron dust. There's something sacred about these few minutes, like the world hasn't realized it's awake yet. But the forge has. You light the fire without thinking. Your hands know the motions by heart. The way to stack the kindling so it catches on the first spark. The angle of the bellows for maximum oxygen. The rhythm of breath and pressure, the flames rise, and with them your day begins. Today's work is armor well a piece of it. A breastplate for a local man who fancies himself a guard. He isn't. But he bought a blade from the peddler last month and has been practicing near the well every morning since. He brings the breastplate in with an expression that says he thinks he's important. You don't say anything. You take the piece, examine the dent, and nod. It's a small job, a few hours, but tricky. Armor must curve with the body, not fight it. Too flat, and it cracks under pressure. Too rounded, and it pinches the wearer. There's a science to it, though you've never learned the words. You just know. The breastplate sings as you tap it into shape. That's the word for it, sing. Not clang, not ring, not bash. Sing. The metal hums under your hammer. The forge glows brighter in response. Your hands find the shape without being told. You've started to realize that blacksmithing is less about force than it is about listening. You listen to the metal, the fire, your own body, when to push, when to hold back, when to let the heat do the work. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths were considered artists. You laugh. Artists get recognition. Smiths get burns. But maybe secretly, you are one. Because when the breastplate finally curves just right, when the light from the fire dances across its surface like liquid, you smile. You made that. The guard farmer swordsman returns at noon. You hand him the finished piece. He barely says thank you, but you weren't expecting praise. He leaves. You stay. You always do. There's a lull after lunch. You spend it repairing your tools. The chisel handle is loose again. You drive in a new wedge file the edge and oil the grip. Then you notice your hands. They're not what they used to be. Your fingers curve slightly, now stiff from years of gripping hammers and tongs. The knuckles are thick, the skin leathered. You remember when you used to wear gloves. You haven't bothered in months, maybe years. The gloves burned through too fast. Your apron's in worse shape. One of the straps is held together with wire. The leather has scorched holes in the belly and smells faintly like old soup, though you're not sure why. But you can't bring yourself to replace it. It fits. You think about that a lot, how things change. Slowly, subtly, without asking. Your voice has changed too. You used to speak with energy, curiosity. Now your words come slower, rougher. You don't raise your voice anymore. You don't need to. People listen when a man who smells like fire and iron speaks. Or maybe they just don't want to hear him twice. That afternoon the priest stops by, not for a tool or a horseshoe, but for a hinge. He wants to replace the creaky one on the chapel door. You nod. You ask nothing. He talks the whole time about sin and blessings and the power of the divine. You just hammer. He thanks you with a muttered prayer and leaves behind a dried fig wrapped in cloth. You eat it immediately. You wonder sometimes if the gods care about smiths. There are stories, Hephaestus, Wayland, Tubal, Cain. But those were divine beings who forged weapons of power. You forge gate latches, not exactly sacred relics. Still, when the fire is hot, and the hammer sings, and the smoke curls just so you feel close to something bigger. Maybe that's worship. As evening settles, you take one last job, a pair of tongs that won't grip. You fix it with a twist of the rivet and a few careful taps. Then you sit, just for a moment. The forge crackles softly. The coals glow. You lean back, eyes half-lidded. Your muscles ache, but it's the familiar kind. Not pain, not exactly. More like confirmation. You're still here. You're still standing. You're still forging. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again. Morning begins with a knock at the forge door. Not a timid one either. 4 heavy raps, impatient, familiar, and guaranteed to bring bad news. You wipe your hands on your apron and open the door to find the tanner's apprentice standing there, boots dripping with mud and expression pinched like he just drank a cup of spoiled milk. Need a new awl, he mutters, holding up a twisted, ruined tool that looks like it lost a fight with a cartwheel. Master says it's urgent. Of course it is. It always is. You take the broken awl, nod, and motion for him to wait. No words wasted. He shifts uncomfortably on the threshold. No one likes waiting in a blacksmith shop. Something about the heat, the smell, the weight of metal hanging everywhere, it makes people feel like they're trespassing in a place that's alive. You start the fire again, like every morning, and set to work. The old awl is beyond saving, but its shape still tells you what it used to be. You cut a new shaft shape, the tip hardened the point. It doesn't take long. The apprentice eyes it when you hand it over, then nods once, awkwardly. Thanks. He offers a half mitten of salted fish as payment. You accept. You always do. Back inside, you sit for a moment. Salted fish in one hand, hot iron in the other. Breakfast of champions. Today is one of those days where your body starts hurting before the work even begins. Your knees pop when you stand. Your back groans like old wood. Your shoulder clicks just to remind you it still exists. You check your tools, lay them out like an altar hammer, tongs, punch, chisel, rasp, rivet set. Each one blackened, chipped, worn, but still yours. The work today is a mix of repairs and reshaping. A bucket handle snapped on someone's well crank, a dagger chipped during a tavern brawl, a mysterious bit of metal from a cart that just stopped working. They always say that. You repair them all, not because you care about the bucket or the dagger or the cart, but because it's what you do. Sometimes you wonder what would happen if you just stopped. Let the fire die. Let the tools rust. Let the village knock on an empty door. But you never will, because you understand the truth that no one says aloud. Blacksmiths are not allowed to rest. Rest means delay. Delay means broken hinges and lame horses. Broken things become dangerous things, and dangerous things become your fault. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths had true agency in the medieval economy. Were they respected for their skills or exploited for their labor? You know the answer. It's both. You're needed, but not celebrated. Essential, but invisible. Until something breaks, then they remember your name. Around midday, a boy arrives. Not the baker's son this time, a new one, probably from one of the outlying farms. He carries a bent sickle handle, still sticky with something you'd rather not identify. You examine it, make a noise somewhere between a sigh and a grunt, and begin. As you heat the blade and start to reshape it, the boy watches with wide eyes. "You ever make swords?" he asks. You nod. "Once. Ever use one?" You pause. You think of the one time years ago when a group of raiders came through, when you stood in the village square with an iron bar in one hand and a hammer in the other. You didn't fight, but you didn't run either. No, you say. But I've made enough to know how they break. The boy blinks. Not the answer he expected, but it satisfies him. He thanks you quietly and leaves. You sit back for a moment, the sickle cooling beside you, and wonder how many boys have asked that same question. Too many. Late in the afternoon, you receive a request that makes you pause. Not because it's difficult, but because of who it's from. The local healer. She needs a new iron pot hook for her herb cauldron. The old one bent during a boiling gone wrong. She sent a note wrapped in clean cloth, along with a few sprigs of lavender and what looks like a homemade biscuit. You smile despite yourself. She's one of the few who doesn't flinch around you. You shape the hook carefully, not because you're trying to impress her, but because you care about the details. A pot hook isn't just a hook. It has to hold weight, resist heat, hang level. You forge it with balance, give it a slight curve at the end, and stamp a small spiral at the base. Just for you. When it's done, you tie it in clean cloth and set it aside. She'll collect it tomorrow. You don't expect thanks, but you look forward to seeing her face. By the time the sun starts to dip, your apron is soaked through, your shoulders feel like they've been used as anvils themselves, and your boots are beginning to come apart at the seams. But the forge is content. You can feel it. You turn the coals one last time, wipe your tools, hang your apron, and before you leave, you press your hand to the anvil. just a moment, just to feel the warmth, the memory, the weight of every strike still echoing inside it. You wonder if anvils dream too. If they do, you hope they dream of you. You've stopped noticing how tired you are. It's not a complaint anymore. It's just a fact. Like gravity, or fire being hot, or the village forgetting to pay on time. Today is market day, which means everyone suddenly remembers that their hinges creak, their plows squeal, and their belt buckles mysteriously snapped sometime last week. They all need your help, and they all need it right now. You wake to find 3 broken tools left by your door. No notes, no names. Just a quiet assumption that you'll fix them. You recognize them anyway, one's from the Cooper one, from the brewer, and one from that nervous man who pretends not to know your name, but always leaves a coin wedged between 2 stones as payment. You place them on the bench and start with the Cooper's chisel. The blade's chipped, the handle's splintered, and the tang is bent. You frown. That takes effort. Probably tried to split a knot in green oak like he was slaying a dragon. You file the edge, replace the grip with scrap ashwood, and hammer the tang straight with a precise 3-count tap that only you can hear. It's satisfying. Clean. Quick. You barely notice the ache in your wrist. The market square grows louder as the sun rises. You can hear the shouting from the forage vendors, haggling geese, honking some unlucky goat being stubborn. You don't go to the market, haven't in years. People don't like you hovering near the produce. Something about soot near the apples, probably. But they like your wares. That part's never in doubt. By midday, 2 more villagers stop by. One needs a new hinge pin for his door again. The other is a baker's cousin's brother-in-law's neighbor, with a scythe so warped it looks like it melted. You don't ask how, you don't want to know. While waiting on a blade to cool, you glance down at your palms. The lines in them are barely skin anymore. They're a map of accidents, burn ridges, blister bubbles, knife-thin scars that split and healed crooked. Your fingers know every tool by shape alone now. You could reach into the pile with your eyes shut and grab exactly what you need. And you often do. There's an odd comfort in that kind of muscle memory. Historians still argue whether medieval blacksmiths passed down their knowledge formally through ledgers, apprenticeships teaching, or informally through repetition and instinct. The truth is both. You learned from your father, but mostly by copying him, until your hands remembered what he didn't say out loud. You don't write anything down. You don't need to. The forge remembers. While you're shaping a new scythe tang, a merchant from the next village arrives, flashy, loud, always smelling faintly of pepper and travel. He leans into your shop like he's afraid to touch anything. Said you made a gate hook for the miller, he begins. Can you make a dozen for a manor up north? You nod, careful not to show interest too quickly. He names a price that's twice what you expected. You nod again. He hesitates. They want them decorative. That's new. Most people want strong, simple, durable, not pretty. But you've made pretty before, quietly, for yourself, for the healer, for the curve of a fireplace poker no one ever noticed but you. You agree to the job. Not for the coin, though, that'll help, but for the challenge. decorative means care. It means shaping curves that won't affect the function but will feel right in the hand. It means adding flourishes that only the bored and wealthy will see, but which will whisper your skill without shouting. After he leaves, you begin sketching, not on parchment, just with chalk on the benchwood, fast lines, arcs. You're not sure what it'll look like yet. You let the forge decide. Later, the healer stops by to collect her pothook. She thanks you properly, looks you in the eye, and places a small linen bundle in your hand. Tea, she says, for the lungs and the sleep. You don't ask what she's heard. You just nod. And then she's gone. You set the tea aside. You'll try it, eventually. For now, there's still work to do. You end the day shaping the first decorative hook. It's small, but stubborn. The iron resists your file. You curse under your breath, then breathe out slow. Calm hands. Patience strikes. When it finally curves the way you want it to, you feel something stir. Not pride exactly, just presence. A sense that you are in the piece now. It'll hang in some noble's door frame unnoticed. But you'll know. You pack up late. Too late. You eat standing up again cold pottage and a chunk of last week's bread chewier now than the sole of your boot. And then, as always, you dim the forge. The coals settle like a sigh. The tools rest where they always do. And you scarred soot-smudged, too tired to speak, step outside. The sky is endless and blue-black scattered with stars. The village is quiet, and somewhere in the silence you think you hear the faint ping of cooling iron. A heartbeat, not yours. The forge's. Still alive. You wake with your jaw clenched so tight it aches. Must have been grinding your teeth again. You don't remember why. Maybe it was a dream, or maybe your body just never stopped bracing for the next day's work, even while sleeping. It's darker this morning, the sky still heavy with clouds that threaten rain. Again, you stretch your back, and it sounds like a tree creaking. The cold has crept into your joints overnight like an uninvited guest, squatting in your spine and elbows. You roll your shoulders. It doesn't help much. Still you rise. You always do. The forge welcomes you like an old friend who's bad at boundaries, loud, hot, and needy. You set the fire before your boots are even laced. Instinct, not decision. Today you've got 3 things on the docket: the decorative hooks for the manor, a snapped rake handle that somehow cracked the ferrule, and a curious job a key. The steward from the manor sent it down with a courier. No explanation, just a note: match this and make 3 more. The key is long rusted and oddly delicate for something so functional. It looks like it might unlock a chest or a gate or something more secret. You turn it over in your hand. There's a groove along one edge that looks almost ornamental. You don't ask questions. You just measure, mark, and begin. Keys are tricky. They require finesse, tiny cuts, precise lengths, smooth teeth. They're not brute force jobs. They're whispered jobs. You file slowly, your breath steady. Outside, the rain finally comes soft at first, then pounding. The forge roof sings under it. You pause to listen. There's something about the sound of rain on metal that quiets your bones. You return to the key, shape it, test the depth, adjust. again, again. Eventually it clicks into place against the original, identical, but new. You wrap it in cloth, lay it beside the others, and get back to the hooks. The decorative ironwork flows easier today. Your hands remember the motion, the curls and counterbalances. You start to feel the rhythm of it again. One beat, one breath. That's when the bell rings. You frown. No one uses the forge bell unless it's urgent. You open the door to find a boy shivering, soaked eyes wide. He holds out a horseshoe. It's bent into a shape that could only come from panic. Plow horse slipped, he says. Cart fell. He's limping. You nod. Take the shoe. Close the door. No scolding, just urgency. The forge flares higher as you press the iron back into shape. A fresh shoe isn't needed. The bend isn't fatal, but it must be exact. Any unevenness, and the horse will stumble again. And maybe worse, you work with care, not for the boy, not even for the horse, but because you understand what happens when small things fail. You cool the shoe, wipe it dry, and hand it back. The boy thanks you. He says his father will pay next week. You nod. You believe him? Mostly. Historians still argue whether medieval blacksmiths operated on trust or coin. Some say the economy was tight and transactional. Others believe favors and promises greased the wheels. You know the truth, promises pay when they can, and you accept them because the alternative is silence. You return to the forge. The rain hasn't let up. You find your seat near the coals and stare at the tools. The tongs that pinch too tight, but you never replace. The rasp worn down to a nub, but shaped exactly for your grip. The hammer with the chipped face your father still balanced better than any new one. You think about how every item here has a memory, a reason for staying. You too. Your breath comes slower now. Your eyes blur slightly, not from tears, but from smoke, maybe, or fatigue. You recall something your father used to say, "Don't worry about being remembered. Worry about what you leave behind." You didn't understand it then, but now, every gate latch, every blade, every quiet fix with no thanks, they're footprints. Even if they're walked over 100 times, they were yours first. You look to the corner where the bronze spiral still rests. You haven't touched it in days, maybe weeks, but it stays there waiting, like a question you're not ready to answer. What would you make if no one asked? What shape would your soul take if it could be forged? You shake the thought loose. You have hooks to finish. As the rain begins to ease, you light a new fire, not because you need to, but because the forge feels cold again. And the forge must never be cold. The rain stops in the night, but it leaves behind its signature puddles in every dented roof tile, a thick dampness in the air, and a forge floor slick with mud tracked in from your boots. You mop it half-heartedly with an old cloth, but the soot only smears darker than before, like the forge is tattooing the very ground. Today begins with the familiar weight in your arms, the soreness that's no longer even pain, just texture. Your shoulders roll with a crunch. Your elbow pops. You welcome it all. It means your body is still responding, still trying. You finish the last of the decorative hooks before dawn. Fully breaks. 12 in total lined in a neat row along the bench. Each one has a slight spiral at the end, almost whimsical. Not your usual style, but the form grew on you. You polish them one by one, the metal gleaming like starlight, before you dim it back down with a coating of oil. Protection against rust, against time. You wrap them in canvas and tie the bundle with thick twine. You sit back, exhale slowly. It's good work. Quiet, steady, almost graceful. But just as you finish, a shout pierces the morning calm. A boy races toward the forge, face red out of breath. The miller's axle cracked, he yells. The wagon's stuck in the crossing, wheels bent bad. You're already moving, apron on, tools gathered, no questions. By the time you reach the mill, a small crowd has gathered. The cart's tilted awkwardly in the mud, one wheel fully off axle, sagging like a snapped limb. You kneel beside it and immediately see the issue, a split right through the iron band and a sheared pin. The wheel was overloaded. Again. You warned them last time. You say nothing. You just get to work. You send the boy back for your brazier. You can't move this axle. The forge must come to it. When it arrives, you set it up in the mud. The rain has made everything 10 times harder. Damp wood, slippery tools, a breeze that refuses to cooperate with your fire. Still, the brazier catches. You work fast, the heat, fighting the cold air in wild bursts. You reforge the band, reshape the pin, and hammer them into place with a rock for an anvil and your own patience as the clamp. It's not elegant, but it holds. When it's done, the cart is righted. The villagers cheer, the miller nods. You wipe your hands on your apron and walk away before anyone offers you leftover grain or another "we'll pay you later" speech. Back at the forge, your hands shake from the cold. You drink from your chipped cup hot water, nothing more. The tea the healer gave you sits unopened, the cloth still neatly tied. Maybe tonight you settle back into your rhythm, or try to, but the forge feels off balance, like it knows you were gone too long. You find comfort in small tasks, tool maintenance, nail sorting. You even clean the tongs, though they'll be black again within the hour. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths formed the heart of their village or stood at its edges, present but apart. You know how it feels. You're the center when something breaks, the fringe when it's fixed. Your life is a loop of emergencies, and yet you're never invited to the celebration afterward. You remember a harvest festival from years ago. Everyone was dancing in the square, laughing, eating, singing. You stood near the back, holding a blade you just sharpened in case someone needed it for carving. No one did. No one asked you to stay. So you didn't. You returned to the forge, sat by the coals, let the heat warm the parts of you the music couldn't reach. There's a strange kind of loneliness in being necessary. You're always around, but rarely seen. You finish the small jobs left for the day. A cracked ladle, ring a door latch that squeaks even when oiled. You handle each with care, even if no one notices. And then near dusk, a surprise. The healer returns. No work this time, just her standing in the doorway. She hands you a new bundle. Bread this time. Still warm. Felt like bacon, she says. You nod. You say thank you. Then with more courage than usual, "You've good timing. I just finished the hooks." You show her the one you kept a 13th made from leftover stock, with an extra curl in the tail and a slight heart at the tip. You didn't know why you made it. Until now. She smiles. That one's mine. You nod. She takes it gently, not like a tool, like a gift. For a moment, the forge feels lighter. Not the temperature, the weight. After she leaves, you sit on your bench, bread in hand, the forge humming at your back. You feel something unfamiliar, not pride, not satisfaction, something quieter, seen. The bread is still warm when you break it open. The crust crackles softly, steam curling out like it's exhaling after a long day. Inside, herbs, maybe thyme, and just a whisper of something sweet, fig or honey, or something you don't quite recognize. You take a bite, chew slowly. No one talks about how quiet a forge can be when it's not working. It's not silence exactly, more like a waiting. The coals rest, but they're never truly asleep. The tools hang still, but you feel them watching. You sit there a while, the half-eaten loaf in one hand, a mug of cooling water in the other. Outside, the night begins folding over the village like a worn blanket. You hear shutters closing, doors latching, a dog barking once, then giving up. You should be preparing for tomorrow's work, sharpening blades, measuring stock, but instead you stare at the spiral of soot climbing the forge wall. It looks almost intentional, like smoke practicing handwriting. Your fingers itch. You reach for your chalk. You draw a line on the bench, then another, then a curve. You don't think. You just move. It becomes a shape, not quite a pattern, not quite a picture. A hook, maybe, or a snake, or a river, or a thought. You lean back and stare. It's nothing. It's everything. It's the kind of thing you used to do as a child before the hammer grew heavier than your imagination, before the job became your shape. Your hands still remember how to make things that don't have to be made. You just forgot to ask them. You blink, then rub the chalk away. The moment passes, but not entirely. It leaves something behind. Later, while brushing down your workbench, you hear footsteps. Not fast, not panicked, just deliberate. You turn to see an older man at the door. Cloak damp with evening mist, eyes tired in a way that goes deeper than sleep. He introduces himself as a messenger, not for a person, but for a guild. From the city. He heard about your gate hooks. You nod slowly. He explains that a noble saw them, asked about the maker. The guild wants to know if you'd consider moving, establishing a forge near the manor district. Better coin, more commissions, assistance, a real roof. The offer stuns you, not because of the invitation, but because you expected to never get one. You don't answer right away. He says he'll return in 3 days. He leaves a seal-stamped parchment and disappears into the dark. You stand in the doorway long after he's gone. Your apron smells like smoke and oil. Your arms are covered in soot. You haven't shaved in weeks, and your boots are more whole than leather. You, in the manor district, you laugh. A quiet one, dry. And yet, you look around the forge, every groove in the floor, every nail bent wrong and hammered flat again, every tool with a name only you know. Could you leave this historian still argue whether tradespeople ever truly escaped their station? Whether upward mobility was a myth or a miracle? You wonder if either matters. Sometimes staying is harder than leaving. You put the parchment on the bench beside your half-drawn chalk shape. You don't touch it again, not yet. Instead, you reach for the old hammer, your father's, and begin working on a piece you weren't asked to make. Not for sale, not for a client, not even for the healer, just something that's yours. You don't know what it is yet, only that it curves and spirals and feels like it belongs. The forge glows as you shape it. The sound of the hammer blends with the night. And for once there's no deadline, no order, no rush, just the rhythm, the fire, and you. You don't sleep much that night, not because of the usual aches or the sound of rain leaking through the eaves. It's the parchment, the offer. The idea that someone in a far-off manor, someone with rings and servants and a bath that doesn't double as laundry wants your work, your hooks. It's absurd, almost insulting. You've poured your life into armor hinges, swords, shoes, and what caught their eye was a curl of metal meant to hang a cloak. But still, they noticed. At dawn, you stand in the forge's threshold, looking at the tools like you've never seen them before. They're all where they should be. Tongs, hammers, chisels, lined up like soldiers waiting for orders. But they don't feel like extensions of you today. They feel like choices. The job this morning is basic 4 nails, a new latch, and a spit for roasting. The kind of work that barely counts as effort anymore. You finish it fast, methodically, and still your mind is back on the parchment. You unwrap it again, reread the same words. The seal is still unbroken, though you know what it promises. City wages, prestige, apprentices, supplies delivered by wagon instead of fetched by foot. But no familiar anvil, no hiss from your own barrel, no spider spinning between the shelf and the wall, no warmth that lingers after you've left for the night. You touch your father's hammer. It's chipped, slightly off balance, but it fits your hand better than your own name. You slide the parchment under a board on the bench, out of sight, for now. Midday brings a woman with a cradle frame needing mending. Her child's been sleeping on the floor since it cracked. You take the frame, examine the joints, and promise to have it back by dusk. As you work, something odd happens. You hum, not loud, not a tune, just a vibration in your throat that matches the strikes. It's not on purpose, it just happens. You catch yourself smiling and don't stop. Later, the healer returns, not for a job, just a conversation. She notices the forge feels different. You've cleaned, she says. You haven't, but you nod. You ask her what she'd do, about the offer. She doesn't answer right away. She walks to the anvil, runs a hand along its edge. Then she looks you dead in the eye and says, "Depends on whether you're chasing something new or running from what you've already built." You sit with that. She leaves. You pick up the cradle frame again. The break is clean. Old wood, weak grain, but the weld is good. It'll hold. You test it with your own weight. It creaks, but stays whole. You think about the child who'll sleep in it tonight, how they'll never know who fixed it, how their dreams might be softer because of your hands. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths were creators or repairers, builders of new things, or guardians of the old. You think that's the wrong question. You're both? and neither. You're someone who shapes the world just enough to keep it from falling apart. You eat late seated on the bench, chewing without thinking. The bread's gone stale. The tea sits untouched. You glance at the forge. The coals have gone soft and low, resting, like they're waiting for your answer. You rise. You pull out the secret piece you started last night, the one with no name, no purpose. You hold it in your hands. It's nothing. It's everything. A curl, a line, a gesture. You set it aside, not to hide it, not to finish it, just to let it breathe. And then just as the night settles over the village, you return to the fire. You don't know where you'll be in a week, a month, a year. But you know this. The forge is still warm. Your hands still work. And the metal still listens. The next day begins like a whisper. No knocking, no shouting. Just the soft creak of wood, the hiss of morning mist on still warm coals, and the faintest scent of burned oil hanging in the air like an old memory. You stretch slower than usual, not from laziness, but from a kind of respect. The forge feels solemn today, quiet, but not empty, like it's waiting for something, or someone. You light the fire carefully, almost ceremoniously. The wood crackles to life, reluctant but obedient. You coax the flame higher, feeding it like a priest tending a sacred flame, and maybe that's not far from the truth. Today's work is light only one commission, a bell, a small one to hang over a door. A merchant from the next village placed the order a week ago, saying he wanted something pleasant, not shrill. As if metal has opinions. But you understand. You always do. Bells are special. They're more than just a shape. A good bell sings. A great bell remembers. You choose your alloy carefully, a mix of scrap bronze copper from a broken kettle and a shaving of tin saved for something nice someday. This is that day. You melt the metal, swirling them like a story being stirred. The heat rises. The forge glows. And as you pour the mixture into the mold, you think about voices, not words, just presence, sound with soul. The bell cools slowly. You wait. You don't rush good sound. While you wait, you repair the rasp you bent 2 weeks ago and meant to fix, but kept forgetting. It's small, tedious work, but comforting, like trimming a bonsai tree made of violins. Then you check the hooks you made for the manna, still waiting to be picked up. You run your fingers along the curves, not to test them, but to remind yourself they're real, that someone wanted them, wanted you. That sealed parchment still waits under the bench. You haven't opened it yet, and now you're not sure if you ever will. Historians still argue whether craftspeople in your time believed in fate. Some say they were deeply religious, trusting divine plans. Others believe tradesfolk like you were practical, too busy shaping the world to wonder why it spins. You think it's both. You don't trust fate, but you do believe in signs. The way a hammer feels different when the strike is true. The way fire dances higher when you're focused. The way the bell sings just now as you lift it from the mold. The tone is pure, clean, bright, but not sharp. Perfect. You hold it in your hand, let it cool fully, and then tap it once with your fingernail. It rings out across the forge, across the yard, into the morning, like a chime of approval. Not loud, but certain. You don't smile, you just nod. The bell will go to the merchant. He'll hang it over a door. People will pass under it not knowing who made it. But some part of you will echo every time it rings. You like that. Around midday, the healer stops by again. She doesn't bring a job, or bread, or tea. She brings a question. Are you going to leave? She asks soft. You pause. I don't know, you say. She looks around at the walls, the coals, the soot, the bench. It wouldn't be wrong if you did, she adds. You've earned something easier. But then she smiles. Doesn't mean it's right. You nod. You don't answer. You don't need to. After she leaves, you return to your work. There's nothing pressing, but still you move. You sharpen the old shears, realign a punch tool, polish the bell just a little. The fire burns low now, but steady. You pull out a scrap piece of iron and start to bend it. No project in mind, no customer, just movement. You shape it into a spiral, let it twist once then again. Not tight, not rushed. It curls like a sleeping cat. You lay it next to the odd bronze piece you've been ignoring, and now there are two. No name, no purpose, just proof that you can still make things no one asked for, that you're not only here to fix what breaks, but to create what might last. And in that moment, you feel the weight of everything you've made. Every nail, every blade, every hinge, everything someone else took for granted. You feel your father's hammer in your hand. You feel your own heartbeat in your chest. And you feel the forge's warmth humming behind you like an old friend leaning in close. Tomorrow, the guild man will return. You may open the parchment, you may not. But either way tonight, you've built something no one can take. Yourself. The messenger returns at sunrise, right on time, boots too clean, eyes too sharp. He carries himself like someone who's never had to bend over a forge, never had soot caked behind his ears, or burns where sleeves don't reach. He smells like citrus and travel. You don't offer him a seat. He doesn't ask. He simply nods at the bench where the sealed parchment still lies untouched since he left it. Well, he asks, any thoughts? You look at him, then at the forge, then at your hands. You've been thinking about it for days, and strangely, this is the first moment you realize you already decided. You reach for the parchment, not to open it, just to hold it. It's a good offer, you say. He smiles thinly. It is. You nod once. But I'm already where I'm meant to be. His smile falters for just a second, then he shrugs businesslike. I'll tell them you declined. You don't respond. You just set the parchment back down gently. It leaves a faint mark on the bench, like it sweated something important into the wood. He turns to leave, but before he reaches the door, he glances back. You could have had an apprentice, a real forge, a roof that doesn't leak. You smile this time, full and honest. I've got a forge, and the roof only leaks if it rains. He leaves. You don't watch him go. Instead, you walk to the anvil and place your hand on its surface. The metal is warm already, waiting, grateful. You exhale and light the fire. It catches like it always does. Because the forge doesn't care about city offers or noble clients. The forge only asks one question, are you ready to begin again? And you always are. You check your to-do list scratched into the wall beam. Half of it's illegible. Smudged charcoal water stains. Probably a chicken walked past while it was drying. You smile and pick one at random. The healer's gate latch. The old one sticks in the rain. She never asked you to fix it, but you heard it squeak every time she visits. So you make a new one. You don't rush. You shape the iron with a quiet reverence. Every tap is precise, measured, musical. Not like you're building something, like you're remembering something. You add a tiny twist at the end. Just a flourish. No one will notice, except you and maybe her. You polish it, not for shine, just enough to feel smooth in the hand. You wrap it in cloth and set it aside. The rest of the morning passes in slow rhythm. A pitchfork needs straightening, a wine hook needs re-riveting. You tend to both like a gardener pruning vines, not hurried, just steady. And then while cleaning your workbench, you spot the odd spiral you made 2 nights ago. It's still just a shape, but it draws your attention. You pick it up, roll it between your fingers. It feels like potential, so you add to it. You heat the end, stretch it longer, then curl it again in the opposite direction. It becomes a loop, then a kind of infinity symbol, then something like a fish hook, but not quite. By the time you set it down, it's something new, something only your hands could have made. You don't know what it's for, and you don't care. That night, after the last job is done, the tools are hung, and the coals are sighing their slow descent, you do something rare. You leave the forge door open, just a crack. You sit on the step outside, arms draped across your knees, watching the sky shift into ink. The stars emerge, timid at first, then bold. The kind of sky that reminds you how small you are and how big the work always felt. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths thought of themselves as craftsmen or caretakers, whether they knew how much of the world rested in their hands. You're not sure what they thought, but you know this: every blade that held every door that didn't stick, every wheel that turned just right, it all passed through fire first, and that fire passed through you. Tomorrow you'll build something else. Maybe another bell, maybe another spiral, maybe nothing for anyone but you. And that too will be enough, because you stayed, and the forge remembers. You rise the next morning before the sun, not because you must, but because your body is long past asking for permission. It's a rhythm now older than thought. Wake, stretch, check the forge. The fire's out. Good. You like relighting it. There's something reassuring about coaxing the heat back from its slumber, like asking the day to begin gently. You start with the bellows. They groan a bit. One of the side seams is starting to fray. You make a note to patch it later with whatever's lying around. You've gotten good at mending the tools that mend the world. The ember catches. The fire returns. Today's first task is a collar ring for the village's oxen, a heavy beast named Calder, who's more stubborn than smart. His current collar keeps popping off when he jerks left. The farmer blames the ox. You blame the collar. You hammer the iron, flat shape it into a loop, overlap the ends, and weld them shut. The iron resists at first thicker than usual, but eventually softens. The trick, as always, is heat and patience. You test it by twisting it in your hands. Solid. It'll hold. You set it aside just as the boy arrives. The baker's son again. He's older now. Not by much, but enough. Taller voice cracking like new timber. He watches you work, eyes full of questions he still doesn't ask. You toss him a chunk of kindling. Feed the fire, you say. He grins, obeys. You don't call him your apprentice, not yet. But he keeps coming back. That's enough for now. He sits quietly as you begin repairing a door hinge for the inn. The one everyone pretends isn't broken. You noticed it 3 weeks ago, how it sags just a hair too much when the door swings open. You shape a new pin, grind the edges smooth, and heat it until it glows. The boy leans in, squinting at the color. What's the right shade? He asks. You think. When it looks like sunrise but makes your eyes ache. You reply. He laughs. Not because it makes sense, but because he understands you're not joking. Historians still argue whether medieval blacksmiths were mentors or just machines with hands. Whether they passed down knowledge in words or silence. You know the truth. You pass it down one burn at a time. While the pin cools, you show the boy how to oil a rasp properly. He does it too fast. You say nothing. Let him learn. His hands are soft. His nails clean, not for long. Midday brings another visitor, the woodcarver. His chisel snapped again. You raise an eyebrow, not an elm. He shrugs. It bites back. You repair the chisel with fewer words than last time. He watches in silence, then leaves behind a small token, a carved figurine. A bird. No explanation. Just a nod. You add it to the windowsill beside the spiral and the tea. It looks like a little collection now. Things no one asked for. Things no one paid for. Things that make the forge feel like something more than smoke and steel. The boy asks if he can stay after sunset. You pretend to grumble, but you nod. He stays close, watches you make nails, simple, boring nails. Dozens of them. He marvels at how consistent they are. You let him try one. It's crooked, too long, head flared wrong. You keep it anyway. Add it to a wooden beam above the forge. You call it practice? He beams like he's been knighted. When the evening settles, he finally asks, do you ever get tired of it? You lean against the wall, the glow of the forge painting everything in shades of gold and red. Every day, you say. He blinks, but you keep doing it. You look at the tools, the fire, the wall of crooked test nails of little gifts and secret shapes. Of course, you say, it's not about being tired, it's about doing it anyway. The forge hisses softly behind you. You hand the boy a wrapped bundle, his first pair of tongs, not new, just shortened, fitted for smaller hands. He clutches them like a sword. Really, you nod. You'll earn the hammer later. He grins, says thank you. You don't say you're proud. You don't have to. He leaves as the stars rise, the bundle cradled under one arm. You watch until he disappears down the path. And for a moment, the forge feels younger, like it remembers your first pair of tongs. The awkward grip, the fear, the spark of possibility. You return to the bench. One more nail before bed. Just one. It's straight, clean, perfect. But you hammer it crooked anyway, then hang it beside his. Because not all perfection is useful, and not all crooked things are broken. The morning feels heavier than usual, like the air is waiting for something to happen. Not storm heavy, just thoughtful. The kind of stillness that presses on your shoulders and makes every footstep feel like it might echo louder than it should. You begin the day with the latch for the chapel door. It's not a complicated piece, just a sliding bolt with a catch, but you handle it like you're making something sacred. Maybe you are. After all, people go to that chapel looking for answers, and a door that doesn't close properly never feels like a good omen. You shape the latch, slowly adding a bit of scroll work on the end. Nothing anyone asked for, nothing anyone will likely mention, but it makes the piece yours. You've started doing that more often. Tiny flares, little rebellions against being invisible. The apprentice shows up again. Early, you don't hide your surprise. He shrugs. I wanted to try again, he says, holding up yesterday's bent nail like a trophy. You let him. He misses the center of the anvil by a thumb's width, but the strike has more weight today, more certainty. You say nothing, but you hand him another rod. He grins. That's enough. While he hammers, you repair a cracked hinge from the granary. It's been sticking for months, but no one mentioned it until it really broke. That's how most jobs arrive at your door, quiet neglect until the snap. Like people you think. By mid-morning, someone else comes calling, a traveler unfamiliar with clothes too clean for the road and a coin pouch that clinks like it's not his. He looks around your forge with a slight curl to his lip. Not disgust, something worse, detachment. Like he sees it all and registers none of it. I heard you work quick, he says. Need a set of shackles. Strong, quiet, custom size. Your mouth goes dry. You ask what they're for. You shouldn't, but you do. He shrugs. Trade business. Cargo control. You stare at him. The air thickens. No, you say. He raises an eyebrow. You're refusing coin. You don't repeat yourself. He lingers a moment as if weighing your worth, then scoffs and leaves. No, thank you. No anger, just dismissal. You watch him go. The apprentice looks at you like you just turned down a king's ransom. You sit for a while after that, longer than usual. You turn the bellows once, then twice, even though the fire doesn't need more air. Why not make them, the boy finally asks. You look at him. Then you answer, because not all metal should be shaped. He doesn't ask again. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths had moral agency, whether they could choose what to build, or if need coin and feudal order dictated everything. Most documents suggest obedience. But then again, documents are written by those who benefit from obedience. You know better. A blacksmith shapes the world, and you decide what it becomes. You stand, shoulders stiffer than usual, but mind clearer. You take the bronze spiral off the shelf, the old one, the one you started without knowing why. Today, you finally do. You heat it carefully, hammer it flat, then recurve it. But now it becomes a clasp, a fastening, not for chains, but for something soft, maybe cloth or ribbon. It feels like an answer. By the time it cools, it shines like an idea made real. You hand it to the apprentice for what he asks. Anything you want to hold gently, you reply. He holds it with both hands like it's glass. The afternoon quiets. You return to your own work. A fire grate, a spearhead, a dozen nails. The world doesn't stop turning, but it does notice. By sunset, the messenger's words echo faintly again. The city, the guild, the roof that doesn't leak. And you realize something. You don't want a new forge. You want this one seen, not changed, not polished, acknowledged. You step outside just before nightfall. The stars blink through the blue. Someone's singing off-key from the tavern. A goat bleats like it's got complaints. And behind you the forge glows like a lighthouse that never stops burning. You lean on the doorframe, soot-smudged, bone-tired, and exactly where you belong. You didn't shape the world today, but you stopped someone else from warping it. And that's enough. The forge is quiet this morning, not just still, but deeply, thoughtfully quiet. You step inside and feel it instantly, that soft hum beneath your boots, like the building itself has exhaled. It's not tired, just resting, like it trusts you to take the lead today. You light the fire slower than usual, letting the flame grow on its own terms. The air is cool, the light outside hazy, and the town hasn't fully woken up yet. You like this moment, the one where nothing is broken, no one is knocking, and the world hasn't decided yet what it wants from you. You decide to finish something you started a month ago, and then tuck behind the coal bin a wall sconce for the chapel. No one commissioned it. You just got tired of seeing them try to light candles in that drafty alcove. You'd forgotten how elegant the piece was, simple lines, but good symmetry. You clean the curved sand out the last nick and forge a tiny rose-shaped cradle for the wax base. Not because anyone will notice, because you will. As it cools, you glance up at the crooked nail beam. It's filling up. There are 20-something nails now, each bent in a different way. Some from the apprentice, some from you. One from the healer when she tried the hammer just once. She laughed so hard she cried. You kept the nail. The apprentice arrives without a word. He just nods, picks up a file, and starts working. That too is progress. He's still too fast. But he's quieter now, focused. There's a rhythm developing in him. You don't say much as the day rolls forward. A broken pothook. A rivet popped loose from an ox cart. One of the church bells lost a bolt. You replace it all without drama. Your hands move with muscle memory that's almost ancient now. But in the early afternoon, a strange request arrives. A letter folded into thirds, no wax seal, just a plain bit of twine tying it closed. You untie it, slowly. The handwriting is deliberate but shaky. It's from an old man you barely remember, a merchant who once brought you a pile of broken hinges 10 years ago. In the letter, he explained that he's nearing the end of his life, and he wants a small plaque forged. Nothing grand, no gold, no flourishes, just a name, 2 dates, and the words, "He was steady." You sit with that for a long time. It's not a monument, it's not a statue, it's a sentence. A sentence he's asked you to make real. You heat the metal, flatten the plate, and begin etching the letters with tools that barely get use anymore. You measure each stroke like you're shaping breath itself. He was steady. You think about what that means. Not brilliant, not famous, not even kind. just reliable, unmoving in the right ways. Still, when it mattered, you finish the plaque and leave it in the cooling rack. You don't wrap it. You don't polish it. It should feel like the man it's for. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths were admired or merely endured, whether they were vital artisans or background noise. You think of the merchant planning for death asking you to write the last word on him. Maybe the question isn't how others saw you. Maybe it's who trusted you when it mattered. That evening, the apprentice holds up a new nail, straight, clean, even-headed. His best yet. You take it. Look at it. Then slowly walk over and tap it into the beam beside the crooked ones. He stares confused. That one's not broken. You shrug. Doesn't have to be. It's part of the story. He grins wider than he has in weeks. You stoke the fire one last time. The coals are red and calm. They'll sleep tonight. You step outside, and the wind is just a breath. Nothing fierce, just enough to remind you you're alive. You look out at the village. The latch you made on the chapel doesn't squeak anymore. The ox is pulling straight. The door at the tavern closes without complaint. You didn't make anything remarkable today, but you kept the world together. One bolt, one hinge, one nail at a time. And tomorrow you'll do it again. Because maybe you're not meant to be remembered in stories or carved into statues. Maybe you're meant to be remembered in the things that never broke. Because you were there. Because you were steady. Some mornings the forge feels like a cathedral, not because of the size or the silence, but because of the weight in the air. Not physical, not smoke, just presence. Like the building itself remembers something you haven't yet earned the right to know. You step inside and bow your head slightly, not in prayer, just out of habit. A quiet nod to whatever it is that lives in this place with you. The day's work starts with a sword. Not a war blade, just a ceremonial piece. The steward from the next town over sent a rider to commission it for some kind of coming-of-age event. It doesn't need to be functional, just beautiful. You don't love jobs like this. They're like painting over stone, all shine, no substance. Still, the pay is decent and the materials are good. You unwrap the iron bar, run your fingers along its length. Smooth, even, no visible flaws, but that's always the trick. Bad metal hides its mistakes. You heat it anyway, and as the orange glow blooms, you close your eyes. Just for a moment, just to remember what you're shaping. This blade won't save anyone, won't split a shield or strike an enemy, but it will be held in someone's hands. It will become a symbol. And symbols, well, they can carry more weight than steel. The apprentice watches you work. Today, he doesn't interrupt, just observes. That's a sign of learning. You draw the sword out, flatten the spine, then start the edge. You don't overdo it. It's meant to gleam, not kill. When it's shaped and cooling, you reach for the hilt. That's where the beauty hides. You carve the handle yourself, oak and leather. You add a small spiral near the cross guard. The same spiral from the bronze clasp. The same you've etched into a dozen unseen places. It's your mark now. Not official, not even recognizable to anyone else, but real. You let the blade rest. It needs to cool overnight. It'll be perfect by morning. As you hang up your tools, the apprentice approaches with a question tucked into his eyes. "Can I make something?" he asks, hesitant. You nod. "What?" He shrugs. "Don't know yet." You hand him a strip of leftover iron, then start with that. You watch him heat it awkwardly like someone trying to learn a language from a poem. He taps too hard too soon. But you say nothing. Let him find his rhythm. You walk outside while he works. The air is damp and sweet. The first wildflowers are blooming near the ditch. You never noticed how many colors they have. You've been staring at gray for so long it's strange to see things that aren't trying to be useful. You pick one, just one. A small white bloom. Tuck it behind your ear without thinking. Back in the forge, the apprentice is holding his iron strip now bent into the rough shape of a question mark. He frowns. "I messed it up." You take it from him. Examine the curve, the twist. It's not even, not symmetrical, not anything really, except interesting. You nod. "Keep it." He blinks. "What for reminding you say?" He doesn't ask what that means, but he smiles. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths saw their work as art or obligation, whether they crafted out of joy or survival. But you know every crooked blade, every perfect hinge, every nail that bent wrong, all of it meant something. Because you chose to shape it. That makes it matter, even when no one else sees. Even when it's a sword that won't be swung, even when it's a flower behind your ear that wilts by sunset. You sit outside as dusk falls, feet stretched, arms resting on your knees. The village is quiet again. One window glows in the tavern. A dog chases something imaginary near the granary. The forge glows behind you. The boy is still inside, reshaping his scrap again, a little more carefully this time. You look at the sky. The stars are slow to arrive tonight, but they do come, one by one, just like everything else you've built. Not fast, not perfectly, but steadily. You sleep deeply that night, dreamless still, the kind of sleep that settles into your bones like warm coals into ash. When you wake, the forge hasn't even begun to stir. The world is still yawning. The apprentice is already outside waiting near the door, holding his bent iron question mark like it's a relic. You let him in without a word. His boots scuff softly against the stone as he takes his place at the far bench. He doesn't ask for instruction. That's new. You light the fire. The bellows wheeze, once then fill like lungs, remembering how to breathe. Today's task is different. A burial spike. It's not often requested, but when it is, you take your time. A man has passed in the next village, not noble, just a carpenter. A good one, apparently. Built a dozen homes. His family wants to place a forged spike in the ground at the foot of his grave, something that won't rot, something that will stay. You hold the iron for a long time before shaping it. There's no rush when making something meant to outlast grief. The metal resists at first thicker than you're used to, more stubborn. But that feels appropriate. A carpenter who worked with wood his whole life deserves something that puts up a fight. You shape the head into a long, flat curl. Not sharp, not decorative, just honest. Something you could press your palm against without flinching. You punch the initials in with slow, steady taps. The letters are uneven, not ugly, just human. The apprentice watches. He doesn't ask who it's for. He doesn't have to. He brings you a cloth without being told, then sweeps the corner near the ash bucket, humming to himself. You realize you haven't heard his voice much before. It's not bad. He hums like someone who doesn't know he's doing it. When the spike is finished, you set it aside to cool. You leave it unpolished. The shine isn't the point. You take a break not out of laziness, but necessity. Your shoulder has been stiff for 3 days now, and the left side of your neck feels like a knotted rope. You sit on your stool and stretch, wincing. The apprentice sees, but pretends not to. You're grateful. He brings you tea, the old bundle from the healer. You'd forgotten it was still there. He's already boiled the water. You drink it slowly, expecting bitterness, but it's mild, earthy, a little sweet at the end, like it forgives you for waiting so long. You chuckle quietly to yourself. Even your tea has patience. Historians still argue whether trades like yours built culture or merely supported it, whether the smith was central to village life or simply behind the scenes. But they never saw a burial spike. They never tasted tea that forgives. They never bent over a fire that remembers your name. The day moves on. You repair a bucket handle, file a gate hinge, adjust the apprentice's grip on the hammer. He's getting stronger. His swing no longer bounces. He hits with intent now. You offer him your backup hammer, not the family one, but close. His eyes widen. He holds it like it's made of glass, then nods solemnly. You don't say you've earned it. He knows. You end the day with an odd little job, a horseshoe that needs to be turned into a charm. Not for use, for hanging over a door. The owner insists it must face upward to catch the luck. You shape the curve carefully, buff the edges, and punch a hole in each tip. As you work, the apprentice asks, "Do you believe in luck?" You stop hammering. Think about it. "Not really," you say. "But I believe in choice." He nods. "Me too." You give him the charm to hang on the shop door. He smiles, hangs it backward by mistake. You don't correct him. Sometimes letting the luck spill out is the better blessing. As night falls, you hand off the burial spike to the courier. You wrap it in thick cloth and include a small note unsigned. It will not bend. He nods and leaves without a word. You and the apprentice sit outside for a moment, watching the last light fade from the windows across the village. "You ever think of stopping?" he asks. You crack your knuckles, glance back at the forge, sometimes, and then you shrug. And then someone needs a nail. He grins. You both fall quiet. The coals glow through the cracks in the forge wall, like a heart still beating, like a promise not yet fulfilled. And as the stars bloom overhead, you realize something. You haven't just been shaping metal all these years. You've been shaping steadiness, something that doesn't rust, doesn't rot, doesn't leave, something that will stay long after your name is forgotten. And tomorrow, you'll do it again, because someone somewhere will need another nail, and you'll be here, waiting. You wake to birdsong, a strange sound, almost suspicious in its cheerfulness. The forge doesn't sing like that. The forge hums, sighs, growls. But birds, they warble like they've never known what it feels like to carry a pail of iron filings uphill at dawn. Still, you let the sound fill the silence. It's good. Strange, but good. The apprentice is already sweeping when you arrive. The motion's automatic now, not just copying you owning it. You say nothing, but you grab the shovel and clear out the clinker from the fire bed. Your little unspoken rhythm. Today's job list is short but fussy. A brass lamp hinge, a cracked scythe socket, and an old weather vane that's decided it prefers pointing nowhere. You start with the vane. It belonged to the old herbalist's husband, long since passed. The vane's shaped like a crow, though now the tail's warped, and the neck leans like it's sighing into retirement. You straighten the frame with care, tapping soft enough to avoid cracking the aging brass. You add a slight bevel to the beak so it'll catch wind again. When you hold it up afterward, it spins slowly. You nod. That's enough. The apprentice works on nails today, his idea. He's lining them up on the bench like soldiers checking the heads for tilt the shanks for evenness. When one comes out crooked, he sets it aside. Doesn't toss it, doesn't complain. You recognize that silence. Mid-morning brings a woman you don't recognize. She has a walking stick, a long braid of silver hair, and a pair of boots that look older than the church steps. She carries a latch. No explanation. Just hands it over, nods once, and says, "It belonged to my mother." You take it. Don't ask questions. Some stories don't need telling. It's rusted bent in the middle like someone leaned on it too often. The hinge pin is frozen solid, and the curve of the catch has flattened with time. You heat it slow. Watch the rust blister and fall away. Beneath all that decay is good metal, stubborn, still strong. You rebuild the pin, reshape the curve, and oil the hinge until it whispers instead of squeals. You hand it back with both hands. She takes it with both of hers. She doesn't say thank you. She just nods again, a little deeper this time, and leaves. You feel that more than words. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths were considered essential or expendable. But you know better. No one thinks about the blacksmith until the lock sticks, the gate won't swing, the latch snaps off in the cold. And then you're not just important, you're the only one who can fix it. The boy finishes his nails and asks what's next. You give him the cracked scythe socket. It's not advanced, but it is annoying. Fiddly angles, thin edges. He grumbles at first, then forgets to grumble, then forgets he was ever frustrated. You watch him realize it fits. That's the moment. That's the hook. That's the moment you got caught all those years ago when a crooked hinge suddenly opened straight after you hit it just right. He's in it now, no way back. Later, you show him the broken hammer you've kept in the back. Shaft snapped, head chipped. Your father's second best. The one he swore never to throw out even after it bit his shin so hard he limped for 3 weeks. Want to fix it, you ask? His eyes light up. You let him. He replaces the shaft, files the burrs, wraps the grip in leather cord without being told. He does it slower than you would, and better than you did the first time. You say, "That was mine." He pauses. You want it back? You shake your head. I gave it to the forge. The forge gave it to you. He holds it like a torch. Evening comes quickly after that. You finish the brass hinge, burnish the lamp fitting, and pour the last of the oil over the tools that need it most. Outside, the sky darkens in layers, peach, then purple, then that deep velvet blue that always feels like the forge's opposite. Cold where you are warm, quiet where you are steady. You and the boy sit by the door, feet kicked out, backs resting against the anvil stand. A breeze rattles the shutters. He speaks unprompted. Do you think people will remember this? You ask this. He gestures around. The work, the place, you. You lean your head back. Think for a long time. Not by name, you finally say, but every gate that doesn't creak, every nail that holds when the storm comes, every blade that doesn't snap when someone needs it to hold. Yeah, I think they will. He nods. That's enough. As the stars blink on, you feel the forge behind you cooling, not dying, just resting. Because tomorrow it will need you again, and you'll be here, steady as ever. You don't dream that night. Or maybe you do, but the dreams are made of iron and ash, and the same rhythm your hands follow every day, so familiar they pass unnoticed. You wake before light, not because anything calls you, but because something inside says it's time. The forge is still cold when you arrive, but not for long. Your breath clouds in the morning chill as you stack the kindling with care. The apprentice isn't here yet. You don't mind. Everyone learns to wake with the fire eventually. You ignite the coals, pump the bellows slowly. The orange glow flickers, then settles, then begins to breathe. You sit and wait with it in silence. Today's job is unusual. You're repairing a weathered iron gate, not just any gate, but the one that leads to the oldest house in the village, the one that always seemed half abandoned, the one you thought no one lived in anymore. Turns out someone does. An old widow, quiet as moss, sent word through the healer. The gate's hinge had snapped, and now it drags like a reluctant ghost every time it opens. You carry your tools across town slung in a sack on your back. The gate is worse than you thought. Hinge snapped clean at the weld frame, sagging rust, chewing through the bottom rail like time itself. You set to work without knocking. She watches from the doorway and says nothing. You nod in her direction, then begin. The apprentice arrives midway out of breath and embarrassed. You don't scold him, just hand him the rasp. Together, you grind the rust down, reset the hinge pin, and cut a new brace for the lower corner. The boy hammers while you align the frame. The sound echoes against the stone walls like a heartbeat restored. When the gate swings freely again, the old woman approaches. She runs her hand along the edge, not to test your work, just to feel it. Then she does something unexpected. She reaches into her apron and presses a small pouch into your hand. It clinks. You open it later and find not coin, but a silver thimble, polished smooth from decades of use. You don't return it. You understand it. You head back to the forge with the apprentice in tow. His shoulders are straighter now. His silence less uncertain, more respectful. Historians still argue whether medieval blacksmiths ever traveled or if they were rooted like trees. Most believe you never left your village. They're right, but also wrong, because Walking through your own streets with purpose, carrying weight and fire in your hands, is travel. It's how you bring the center of the world with you wherever you stand. Back in the forge, you let the apprentice make a decision next job or practice. He chooses practice. You hand him a new bar. He shapes a hook. Too square. He tries again. Too thin. You nod. You don't fix it. He fixes it. Outside rain begins not hard, just a fine mist that coats everything in silver. The kind of rain that makes time slow down. Inside, you begin your own task, reforging a broken hinge from the inn's pantry door. The crack isn't deep, but it's old, the kind that's grown tired. You heat it, slowly brush away the soot, and press it back together. You don't just fix the hinge, you forgive it. That's what people never understand about this work. Forging isn't just force, it's grace. You give tired metal a second chance. The boy asks why you don't mark your name on the things you make. You glance at him, smile faintly. I do. He frowns. Every curl you explain, every clean line. Every time it works and no one notices, that's my mark. He nods slowly. You see understanding take root. That night, as the forge cools and the rain continues to fall like a lullaby, you look at the shelf. The spiral is still there. So is the question mark scrap. The crooked nails, the carved bird. You place the silver thimble beside them, not a trophy, a thank you. You sit by the door with a wool blanket over your knees, staring at the glowing embers. The apprentice sits nearby, quiet. Do you think I'll ever be ready? He asks. You don't answer immediately. Then, that depends. On what? On whether you stay, you say. When no one's watching. When the work isn't glorious. When it's just you and the fire and a piece of metal that doesn't want to be anything. He nods. Then softly, I think I will. And you believe him. The forge dims, the village sleeps, and you steady, soot-streaked silent watch the rain fall until your eyes grow heavy. No songs, no fanfare, just the knowledge that today you held something broken and made it whole again. The next morning, the rain is gone, but the earth still remembers. Mud clings to your boots as you walk, thick and reluctant, like it's trying to keep you grounded a little longer. You like that. You don't trust ground that lets go too easily. The forge greets you with a low groan from the bellows, as if it too is stretching old limbs. The apprentice is already inside, sitting on the bench, turning one of his practice nails over in his hand like a talisman. You say nothing, just nod. He nods back. That's enough. Today is for hinges, lots of them. Someone's barn collapsed in the night, not from storm or sabotage, just age. Beams rot, nails wiggle, loose walls lean, and then one day gravity wins. They need new hinges for the rebuilt doors. 4 sets, big ones. Thick iron bands with long plates to hold against warping wood. You pull out your longest flat stock and mark the holes first. The apprentice asks why. Because it's easier to punch when the iron is cool, you say. After the forge, it remembers being liquid. It fights back. He doesn't get it yet, but he will. You heat the bars and start shaping the long arms of the hinges. The fire crackles with energy. Sparks fly into the dim rafters like little prophecies. You let the rhythm guide you, tap, pull, shift, strike. One hinge at a time, you coax the iron into submission. You don't rush. You don't need to. You're not making weapons. You're making doors work. Historians rarely mention hinges. They focus on battles, crowns, and treaties. But doors that open and close properly, they're what kept everything else working. The apprentice files the edges. You teach him how to test the hinge's swing by feel not sight. If it clicks, it's too tight. If it slides like silk, it's just right. He ruins the first one. You let him. The second is better. The third is his. By midday, sweat beads along your back, even in the cool air. Your apron is damp, and your fingers ache in a good way, the honest kind of ache. You take a break. Sit on the step. The apprentice joins you, holding a flask of water which he passes without a word. You drink. The metal of the flask tastes like yesterday's tea. You don't mind. Across the lane, a child runs by chasing a hoop made from a barrel ring. You remember making one just like it last year. The child doesn't remember. That's how it should be. You've made dozens of toys, none for your own amusement. Horseshoes for toddlers, rattles even a tiny iron duck that squeaks if you rock it just right. You made that one for the healer's niece. None of them lasted long, but that was never the point. You finished the last hinge just as the sun dips behind the chapel roof. You test each one, hold them in your hands. They feel right, weighted, solid, humble. The apprentice packs them in burlap and ties the ends without being told. His knots are still sloppy. You don't say anything. The hinges won't care. Later, when the forge is cooling and the tools are hung, he asks something he hasn't before. Did you ever want more? You don't pretend not to understand. You think about the guild offer, the city forge, the apprentices, the gold-trimmed commission sheets. You think about being remembered. Then you look around at the crooked nail beam, the soft hiss of sleeping coals, the small spiral that still sits on the bench, at the apprentice beside you who once burned his fingers holding tongs upside down. I wanted different, you say, but not more. He thinks about that. It settles in him like heat in iron, slow but certain. You hand him the old rasp you've been hiding in the back. It's worn thin, barely bites anymore. Sharpen it, you say. Is it worth saving? You shrug. Maybe not. He understands. Begins filing. As the stars return and the village tucks itself into beds and straw mats and blankets near fires, your forge glows faintly behind you. Not for warmth, not even for light. Just to say we're still here, and that's enough. Because tomorrow, someone will knock with something broken. And when they do, you'll be ready, with your apron on, your tools in hand, and no questions asked. It's quiet again this morning, not the soft, sleepy quiet of early dawn, but the kind that feels intentional, like the village has collectively decided to hold its breath. You notice it as soon as you open the forge door. The bellows seem to wheeze more softly. The tools hang stiller than usual. Even the dust in the rafters seems suspended in thought. You light the fire anyway. You always do. Today's commission is rare. A sword. But not a decorative one. This is for someone who intends to use it. The steward from 2 villages over sent the request, a young man preparing to enter the Lord's service. The letter was formal, but the attached coin pouch spoke clearly. He wants something reliable. You pull down the steel from the shelf. It's good stock, clean, strong, responsive. Not all steel sings when you heat it, but this bar hums before the flames even lick its edge. You flatten it slowly, elongate it, then begin the first drawing of the blade. Each strike is deliberate. The apprentice watches from the side, silent, knowing not to interrupt the first shaping. You show him how the grain of the metal forms, how to follow it, not fight it. How to let the blade decide where it wants to go. Isn't it just hitting it into shape, he asks. You stop. Hold the red-hot bar in your tongs like a question. It's not about force, you say. It's about listening. He nods, doesn't ask again. The blade takes hours. You hammer, reheat. Hammer again. You quench it slowly, not all at once, cooling the spine first, letting the edge harden last. It's a trick your father taught you. Keeps the blade strong but not brittle. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths understood metallurgy or if they simply stumbled through centuries of trial and error. You know the truth. You don't need words for grain structure or carbon content. You need experience and hands that have burned enough times to learn where to stop. The blade emerges straight, lean honest. No ornament, no gold, just balance. The apprentice traces a finger over the tang. Are you going to add your mark? You shake your head. This isn't mine, but you do add one thing on the underside of the guard hidden from sight. A single spiral etched with a file tip no bigger than a fingernail. It's not a signature, it's a whisper. The hilt is leather wrapped. Oak core simple guard, no gems. You finish it with beeswax and smoke it over the forge until it feels like it belongs in the world. When it's done, you hand it to the apprentice. He lifts it with both hands. The blade doesn't shine. It doesn't need to. You think he'll win his battles, he asks. You shrug. That's not my part of the story. You package the sword in cloth, not showy, just respectful. It'll travel by cart in the morning. Later, as the forge cools, the apprentice returns to a project he's been hiding in a corner, a dagger, small and stubby, but promising. His first solo blade. He shows it to you shyly. It's ugly, uneven, heavy in the wrong places, but it holds. You nod. What's it for? He shrugs. I just wanted to see if I could. You smile. That's how it starts. You help him polish it, not to shine it, but to show him how the lines flow, where the edge could be truer, where the curve can serve, not just look pretty. You resist the urge to fix it. That's the hardest part. As night falls, the village is still. The chapel bell rings, once faint in the distance. Someone coughs. A door creaks, life in its quietest form. You sit by the open door legs, stretched out hands, stained black wrists, sore. The apprentice sits beside you, dagger in his lap, staring at it like it's a puzzle with no solution. You'll make another, you say. He nods. Yeah. You close your eyes. Let the weight of the day settle in your bones. Today, you made a sword that might change someone's life. And a boy made a dagger that might change his own. Neither was perfect, but both were necessary, and when the embers behind you finally dim into silence, you whisper a quiet truth that no one hears. But the forge I did enough, and the forge agrees. It's colder than usual this morning, not the kind of cold that bites, but the kind that lingers in your fingertips, reminds you how thin the line is between comfort and ache. You rub your palms together as you coax the fire back to life. The forge groans a little as it wakes, like you do on slow mornings. The apprentice is late. You don't mind. He's earned a morning of sleep. You start the first job alone a key. Not for a door, but for a chest? A traveling merchant brought it in yesterday, bronze ornate old. The chest belonged to his grandmother, he said, locked for decades. You hold the original key fragment in your hand now, snapped at the bit, worn at the bowl. The teeth are barely there. You study it carefully like a code, because that's what a key is really, a conversation between metal and mystery. You sketch out the new pattern on scrap, then shape the bit, carefully, slowly. One misfiled tooth, and the whole thing is just decoration. When it's done, you test it in a mock lock. It fits. No click yet, but it fits. That's halfway to trust. The apprentice arrives as you polish the bow. He's holding bread in one hand and something wrapped in linen in the other. Made this, he says shy. It's a hook, a wall hook twisted into a double spiral at the end. Uneven, but charming. You turn it over in your hands. Nice curl, you say. He glows. You mount it on the wall right then beside the others, the bird carving, the thimble, the crooked nails. The forge's memory shelf. He watches you do it, doesn't say anything, just smiles into his tea. The merchant returns at noon. You hand him the key. No promises, just possibility. He thanks you. Not with coin, but with something rarer. He takes the key, presses it to his chest, and says, I've waited 30 years to know what's inside. Then he walks away. You never learn what was in that chest, and you don't need to. You gave him access. That was your part. The rest belongs to him. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths shaped history or merely watched it pass by, but you unlock history, one hinge, one sword, one key at a time, and sometimes you do it for people who don't even know they were locked shut. In the afternoon, the healer stops by not for repairs, but to leave something, a small bundle of dried lavender and pine needles. She places it on the edge of the anvil like an offering, for the smell, she says, just in case the forge gets lonely. You thank her with your eyes. The apprentice asks if the forge can get lonely. You pause. Think about it. Only if no one listens to it, you say. He nods like that makes sense. You're not sure it does, but it feels true. You spend the rest of the day on hinges again. Always hinges, always the quiet heroes. You teach the apprentice how to punch clean holes. He hits too hard, then too soft, then just right. By evening, the sky turns a pink you've never seen before. The forge light bounces off the walls like it's dancing. You hand the apprentice a new file, his own. It's not fancy, but it's his, for what he asks. Everything you reply. You sit in the doorway again as the stars come out. He joins you clutching his file, like a promise. Across the village, someone sings. A lullaby, maybe. You can't hear the words, just the melody. You close your eyes. Today, you made a key and gave one away. Both will open something. You don't know what yet, but you'll be here when they return. The first frost arrives overnight, painting every surface in the village with a thin silvery edge. The forge roof glistens. The grass crackles under your boots. Your breath puffs out in little clouds like the earth itself is sighing through you. The apprentice is already waiting, huddled near the embers, hands cupped around a mug of something hot. You don't ask what it is. It smells like thyme and burnt honey. Probably tea. Probably terrible. He grins anyway. You strike the flint. The forge stirs. Today's job is armor. Shoulder plates for a knight who probably won't use them. Just another performance of power, another pageant. But even ceremonial armor has to move, has to bend, or the wearer will feel like they're drowning in metal. You select the sheets, thin but tough, and begin rounding the pauldrons. The apprentice watches closely as you shape the curve, explaining how each bend must follow the body, not fight it. Good armor doesn't make you stronger, you say. It lets you stay strong longer. He nods, thoughtful. He gets it. You work in near silence. The apprentice starts filing a knife, blanks something he's been shaping in secret. You let him. His hands are sure now. No more guessing. Mid-morning brings an unusual visitor. The miller's wife, arms crossed, jaw set. She drops a warped skillet on your bench with a clatter. I tried to fix it, she says. You look it over. The base is curved like a hill. Probably put it on the fire when it was cold, let it warp in the heat. You nod. You made it worse. She raises an eyebrow. Can you make it better? You grin. Always. She snorts and walks off. You press the pan flat again, slowly. The trick is not brute force. It's pressure, patience, and heat. The skillet doesn't scream or protest. It just relents. You give it back by noon. She doesn't thank you. But she leaves 2 oat cakes on the step. Still warm, still soft. That's plenty. You eat one, hand the other to the apprentice. He devours it like a starving wolf. While he chews, he asks a question you weren't expecting. What happens when you can't do this anymore? You pause. Your jaw works. You finish the bite before answering. I won't stop because I'm tired, you say. I'll stop when the work stops needing me. He frowns. But doesn't it always need someone? You nod slowly. That's the point. He doesn't reply. But you see the weight of the thought settled in his shoulders. You hand him the half-finished knife blank. Finish it. He hesitates. It's not good yet. Exactly, you say. Neither are you. But that doesn't mean you wait. He works in the background while you finish the armor. You shape the curves. Add a small ridge along the edge. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to catch the light. You punch 2 holes in the top corner for lacing, and before you think twice, etch a spiral near the rim. You haven't done that on a commission piece before, but it feels right. The apprentice sees it, doesn't ask. He knows now the spiral is a mark, yes, but more than that, it's a promise, a return, a coil that always loops back into itself. That evening, a storm rolls in low clouds, heavy wind, the kind that makes shutters complain and dogs hide under carts. You secure the forge doors, dampen the coals, Everything breathes a little deeper when the wind howls. The apprentice stays late. Together you sort the scrap pile. You find an old clamp you'd forgotten. He finds a broken hinge and asks if it can be fixed. You say no, but hand it to him anyway. You'll learn more trying to fix what can't be saved, you say. He nods like that makes sense. The forge flickers in the dark, casting long shadows across the wall-curved blades, crooked nails, long forgotten tongs. All of it whispering memory. You glance at the memory shelf again. The spiral, the thimble, the question mark. The bird, the charm hook, and now the knife blank. Still rough, still unfinished. Like you. The boy looks up at you, eyes wide in the firelight. Do you think I'll be ready? You shrug. Maybe not, but I'll do it anyway. You smile, you already are. Outside the storm deepens. Inside the forge holds its ground, because that's what it was built for. And so were you. The storm passes in the night, but it leaves its fingerprints behind. Branches litter the roads. A shutter dangles from the inn's second floor. Mud creeps like spilled paint across the village paths. And your forge still standing. Damp around the edges, but undaunted. Just the way you like it. You arrive before the apprentice as usual. You like the quiet before the rhythm begins. You check the tools, wipe the anvil, nudge a coal back into place with your toe. The wind knocked a few things over in the night. One of the hooks on the memory shelf, the bird carving, has fallen behind the bench. You retrieve it, gently dust it off, and place it back. It's chipped now, just slightly. You leave it that way. Not all scars need fixing. The apprentice arrives red-faced and breathless, apologizing for oversleeping. You wave it off. He's already proven himself a dozen times. No one here keeps score not like that. Today's work is humble nails, hinges, and a strange job from the tavern reinforcing the iron rings around the ale barrels. One burst during the storm soaked a third of the cellar. You shape the rings methodically. Heat, bend, check the curve, rivet. Again. The apprentice does the filing. He's good at it now. He hums while he works. Mid-morning brings the healer, not for tea, not for talk. She sets a small cloth-wrapped bundle on your bench. Don't open it until nightfall, she says. You nod. She stays a moment longer than usual, fingers trailing along the wall. Then she leaves without another word. You tuck the bundle behind your tools. The rest of the day passes in rhythm. You fix a broken blade from the butcher's cleaver. You patch a dented oil lamp base. You quench a new set of hinges in brine instead of oil, just to see if it makes a difference. You'll never tell anyone, but you like experimenting, even after all this time. The forge never stops teaching if you're quiet enough to hear it. The apprentice asks if he can try making a hinge. You let him. His first version is a mess, warped and uneven. The second is better. The third clicks into place like it's always been waiting to exist. You don't say, well done. You just take it off the anvil and install it on your own tool chest. He sees. He understands. Near sundown, the storm clouds return not as thunderheads, but soft shadows, long stretches of gray. The kind of evening where the world feels folded in on itself, waiting. You remember the bundle. You unwrap it slowly. Inside a worn strip of linen embroidered with a spiral at the corner. Nothing else. At first you're not sure what it means. Then you look closer. The spiral isn't embroidered in thread. It's hair, braided dark and old. You know whose it is. You close your hand over it gently. It's not a gift. It's a message, a thank you, a goodbye, a memory. You wrap it again carefully, then place it on the shelf, right between the crooked nail and the silver thimble. The apprentice asks what it is. You don't answer. He doesn't ask again. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths ever saw what they created as legacy, whether they knew their blades, their bells, their hinges would outlive them. You know the truth. You knew it the day someone handed you your first hammer, the day you struck your first piece of glowing iron and heard it sing. You don't need a plaque or a statue. You have a shelf. You have a flame. You have a boy learning to strike iron true. That's all the legacy you need. As night deepens, you sit beside the forge, letting the coals fade slowly. No rush, no urgency. You rest your hand on the anvil. It's warm. It always is. Outside the village settles into sleep. Lanterns dim. Doors click shut. The wind stirs only gently now, like it knows you're watching. The apprentice sits nearby, quiet, present. He doesn't know it yet, but tomorrow you'll let him open the forge without you, just once, just to see what he does with it. And whatever happens, whether he fumbles or flourishes, it'll be enough. Because the work doesn't end when your hands grow still. It continues in every hinge that doesn't creak, every nail that holds through winter, every gate that swings wide and true, and in every flame lit by someone who once watched you work. You wake up before the light breaks over the hills, but today you don't move right away. You lie still beneath the worn blanket staring at the ceiling beams you've stared at 1,000 times. They creak in the same places, hold their same secrets. Your body aches in the usual spots, the shoulder that never quite healed, the hip that grinds when it's cold, the fingers stiff with too many seasons of hammering. But today, you smile at it all, because today you don't light the forge. You leave the door cracked just enough, and you sit at the bench with your tea, real tea this time, made by your own hand with herbs the healer left behind. The apprentice arrives before you finish the cup. He looks nervous. You say nothing. You just nod toward the coals. He gets it. He starts the fire, pumps the bellows, arranges the tools. The forge responds not with a roar, but a quiet hum. A greeting. You watch him work. His first job re-riveting a broken lantern bracket. It takes him 3 tries. He mutters under his breath, drops a rivet, almost burns himself. But he finishes, and it holds. You say good, nothing more, nothing less. He smiles. You begin sorting through your scrap pile, not because anything needs fixing, but because you like the sound it makes. Clink, clatter, memory in metal form. You find the first hook you ever made. Bent, too thin. You hang it on the memory shelf. You don't care that there's no space. You make space. You remember your father's forge, the smell, the way his hands moved without thought, the firelight on his face, the first time he let you swing the hammer. You never thought the day would come when you'd become him. and you never thought you'd be ready. You weren't, but you did it anyway, and now the boy is becoming you. You eat lunch together on the step, sharing hard bread and old cheese. You talk about nothing, about everything. He asks if there's a tool you haven't made. You tell him I never forged a lock for myself, only keys. He thinks that's wise. You tell him it's not. It just means you never trusted yourself to stay still. Later, he works on a hinge while you sit with the unfinished spiral you started months ago. You run your thumb along its curve. It's perfect now. Not because it's flawless, but because it reminds you what your hands can do. You mount it to the wall, not the shelf, higher, where it catches the light from the forge, where it will stay long after you're gone. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths understood their role in history, whether they knew the tools they made would last generations. You don't argue, you just keep building, even as your back aches, even as your hands stiffen, even as your hearing fades and your eyesight dims. Because in the forge, none of that matters. Only the fire, only the iron, only the rhythm of the work. The apprentice packs up as dusk settles. He forgets to hang the tongs. You don't remind him. Tomorrow, he'll notice, and he'll fix it. You sit one last time at the bench, fingers tracing the grain of the wood worn smooth by years of elbows and ash and thought. The forge is still warm. The air hums like it always has. You look around at the shelf, the crooked nails, the bent question mark, the spiral, the thimble, the hook, the memory of 1,000 quiet victories. Then you close your eyes. You don't sleep, not yet. You just rest, because now finally someone else can carry the hammer, and you've earned the silence. So now the forge cools gently each ember, fading into a soft orange glow like fire remembering how to sleep. The tools are quiet. The air is still. And outside, the wind carries no burdens tonight. You lean back. Let your breath slow. Let the weight of the day fall away. Your hands rest in your lap hands that have shaped iron-held heat, steadied lives. Hands that deserve stillness now. The village sleeps nestled into itself like a tired child. Somewhere, a dog sighs. A shutter taps once against wood. The world has no need for sound anymore, not until morning. And you've done enough. Let that thought settle over you like a warm blanket, like ash over flame. You've built what others will use. You've fixed what others have broken. You've taught someone to carry the fire, and now you drift, not away, but inward, into the soft dark of rest, into the memory of hammers and sparks, and the hush that follows a long day well spent. The forge will be there tomorrow. The work will wait. And you can let go just for now. Close your eyes. Breathe deep. Sleep well. You are steady. You are warm. You are home.